allegiance and stay standing for the invocation.
Mayor, it's at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, shucks.
I'm going to reconvene the meeting, and we join Councilman Stipp in the Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. O Lord, Father of all mercy and God of all comfort, you always go before and follow after us. Grant that we may rejoice in your graciousness, in your gracious presence, and continually be given to all good works as we do your will for our city. We ask that you protect and guide the men and women serving our community, our state, and our nation. Be with them in all that they do. We thank you for your presence, your power, and your peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Councilman Stipp. All right, we need a motion and a second, so please excuse Vice Mayor Loretano from the regular meeting this evening. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Osborne, a second by Councilman Stipp. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Let's go to communication. We have one communication item tonight. We will recognize the winning artist from the Spring 2017 Mayor Select Art Contest. Welcome, Guyleen Oslansky, Arts and Culture Coordinator. We look forward to this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here tonight to recognize all of these talented students. You can see we've got a full house tonight. The Mayor Select program really evolved from the vision of Mayor Lord to recognize the talents of Goodyear youth, but also support their path to higher education. The Mayor Select program is entering its 5th year. In 2016, we had 8 schools participate in 145 entries. So we've really seen a lot of growth with this program. It's been very successful. And this isn't possible without our sponsors, Palm Valley Pediatric Dentistry. They have contributed over $15,000, and they are the exclusive sponsor of this program. Is Dr. Olga with us tonight? It looks like sometimes Dr. Olga's practice. She's probably still working on some children's teeth right now. But they have been amazing supporters of this program. We are very grateful for them and really just fortunate to be able to pass on this sponsorship to our students in our city. Many people contribute to the success of a program, from our Goodyear Arts and Culture Commission, those that serve on our selection panel, our art teachers. Is Darlene Dill with us tonight? Darlene Dill and Ryan Williams and Esther Allman, these are some of the names of the art teachers that work diligently with their students. They really support this program. They really encourage their students to participate and really encourage them to strive and do the best that they can do. And so we appreciate their efforts.
I couldn't see. Are they here? Did they?
They're not here with us tonight.
Here. Okay.
So with that, I would like to move on to recognize each of our students. And Lauren is here with me to help hand out the awards to them. And so we have 2 divisions, a junior division, which is 6th through 8th grade students, and we recognize the top 3 students in that category, and we give honorable mentions. So our first place winner is Emmeline Bike with Voice the Valley. She is the winner of $150, and if she would please come up here to receive her award, that would be great. Students, as you come up, if you would please remain standing until the end of the presentation, and at the end, we'll take one photo, and parents will be invited to take photographs at that time as well. Our second place winner in the junior division is Catherine Bake with Birds in the Forest. She wins $100. Third place in our junior division is Zoe De La Cruz with Illuminated Manuscript. She wins an award of $50. All three of these students are from Trivium Prep Academy. We also want to recognize our honorable mentions in this division. Our selection panel tells me year after year how difficult it is to choose the winners for this because there are so many amazing, talented students. And so for our honorable mentions, we'd like to recognize Alyssa Bradley, Alyssa Bradley attends Trivium Prep. And also Peyton Stone. She's a 7th grader at Odyssey. Our next division is our senior division, and these are our 9th through 12th graders. And we offer an award in 4 categories. The categories are drawing, painting, photography, and digital media, as well as 3D artwork. And we recognize one outstanding person in that category, as well as provide honorable mentions. So our first place winner in drawing is Caitlin Conchola. She is a 12th grader at Desert Edge High School, wins $200. Again, we have so many talented students in the drawing category. We'd also like to recognize Paola Vega Soto for observations. She's a 12th grader at Desert Edge. And Naya Torres for Cactus Wren. She's a 10th grader at Trivium Prep. The students that are unable to be with us tonight, we'll make sure we mail their awards to them. In the senior division, painting first place is Brianna Broadbent for Shy One, 11th grader at Desert Edge High School. She wins $200. Also in the painting category, we need to recognize Kelsey Phillips for Cityscape. She's 11th grader at Millennium. Samantha Santos for Santos Self-Portrait, 12th grade, Estrella Foothills High School. And finally in this category, Tyler Flowers for Miss Queen. She's a 12th grader at Estrella Foothills. In the senior division 3D, first place goes to Kayla Phillips. She's a 12th grader at Desert Edge, and she receives $200.
Nice.
And also in the 3D division, for honorable mention, James Nin, Forgotten Souls, 12th grade, Desert Edge. Senior division photography, first place goes to Allie Geiselman for Red Flower, 11th grader at Estrella Foothills, and she wins $200. We'd also like to recognize Emily McHarren for Flower Child, a 12th grader at Estrella Foothills. And Madison Londy for White Sandy Beach, 11th grade, Estrella Foothills High School. And finally, the Mayor Select, we provide one Best of Show winner out of all of the entries. And this year, Mary Baylog, and for the drawing, Andrew Warhola. She's a 12th grader at Estrella Foothills High School. She wins a scholarship award of $500. Mary did email her regrets that she wasn't able to attend this evening, but she is very thankful of the award. And with that, Mayor and Council, I conclude my presentation, and we would like to take a picture with you, if possible, with our honorees
Yes,
here.
and I'm sure council would like to make some comments. So if the group would just turn around and look at your council so they can tell you how much they appreciate you and your talent. I'll start out down here with Councilman Holman.
This is the first time I have seen this. Unfortunately, I didn't make any of the receptions, but congratulations. It's beautiful work and very, very enjoyable for a person like me who respects talent like yours. Thank you so much.
Councilman Campbell?
I just want to add my congratulations to each of you. Your pictures are extraordinary, and we're really enjoying looking at them. So thank you, and best wishes for a successful career in artistry.
Councilman Osborne?
Well, talk about talent. You guys did a great job. Congratulations. And you got a little money to go for your efforts. And we're thankful for the sponsorship every year for this great contest. Now, I will have to tell you that I draw one mean stick figure. I'm sure you guys could show me something better, and you certainly did. Good job, guys.
Councilman Stipp?
Oh, that threw me off. I was waiting for Councilmember
I know,
Pasillo.
I thought I would make sure you're on alert.
I'm usually the other bookend. That's what I was preparing in my head. Anyway, for someone who is not struck at all with the creative stick, it's really amazing to look at your different perspectives as you've either drawn or taken photos or the watercolors, etc. So just, congratulations on A, having the talent, and then B, not being afraid to show it. And you should be very proud of yourselves for having that courage, and you've all certainly shown a great deal of talent. So thank you for bringing that to the city.
Councilman Pasillo?
You know, it's amazing. Again, I have no talent when it comes to art. I'm a numbers guy, but I can really appreciate what you do with either watercolors, with either sketching, and this beautiful art you do. I can really appreciate that. Keep pursuing your, apparently a passion if you're doing it this well. Keep pursuing your passion all the way through, and don't ever give up. And again, this is great work. Thank you.
Well, I get the last word, but you are spectacular. I can't tell you the difference in the quality from the first year that we started this. And you've grown, and many of you have participated in some of the other ones. I see the same artists coming back again. You are just magnificent. Art is not dead. It's so nice, and you're a witness to that. So we are so pleased. And whenever you get a chance, be sure you talk to Dr. Olga and tell her thank you, because she comes back every year, and it's quite a bit of money she's donating, and to advance you. And so someday I hope we see your paintings and stores for sale, or I will see you on TV, or you'll get a great scholarship to a school. So we're very, very pleased. And finally, we'd love to have your picture. So how do you want them to do it? Do you want to take them alone? Do you want them up here like we always do it? So you just tell me. Yes, all right. Like we always do. That's right. Okay, thank you.
And you want to do it over here?
You want me to get up in this corner?
Comes to art, I have zero.
Oh, when it comes to art, I didn't hear that one.
I have some, but it has nothing to do with it. Zero when it comes to art.
Only one wall, please.
At least you can draw a stick person. I can't even draw a stick person.
It's a mean stick.
Wally, you and I are becoming a number here.
I know. I'm telling you. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. Gosh. Not to worry.
Yeah, right. All set?
Okay.
Yeah, it is my neighbor. I thought she looked familiar.
That cleaned the room up. I said, that certainly cleaned the room out here.
Room.
Yeah, I know. Easily.
The talented half of the room.
From the mayor. My child.
Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the city council on any non-agenda item. Do we have any cards?
No, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? All right, then we'll go on. Will the city clerk please read consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.6 by title only?
6.1, approve draft minutes from a regular meeting and a special meeting held on April 24, 2017, and a regular meeting and a special meeting held on May 8, 2017. 6.2, approve a request from Lauren K. Merritt, agent for Texas Roadhouse Restaurant, for a permanent extension of premises patio permit for liquor license number 12079642. Texas Roadhouse is located at 15255 West McDowell Road, Goodyear, Arizona. 6.3, approve budget transfers. 6.4, authorize the city manager or designee to execute an intergovernmental agreement with Maricopa County for exchange of services. 6.5, authorize the city manager to approve an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Goodyear and the Regional Public Transit Authority for the provision of transit services in Goodyear. 6.6, authorize the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Litchfield Park, providing for the continued use of the Goodyear Justice Center to the Litchfield Municipal Court for courtroom operations.
Does anyone from the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Does anyone on the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Ben? Oh, yes, Councilman Stipp.
It's
Pizzillo?
close enough.
Pizzillo?
Got a question on 6.3.
A question on 6.3. Will somebody come
Budget
forward
transfer.
on the proposed, are you, the transfers?
Yes.
Somebody come forward and talk about those transfers?
Where's Lori?
She's getting her paper. I couldn't go an evening without, misrepresenting them.
That's okay.
I know, but
He's the handsome one. Just
my
remember
mom
that,
would be
okay?
very
Well,
upset.
you should see what I call my kids.
Searching for my copy, which I shoved in with all the budget stuff. So is there a specific question?
That's all
or
right,
can I
they're
provide
patient.
some information?
Just a general question. On the ballpark, we're going to be talking about later down the road here on a specialty revenue fund for the ballpark. And I think I know the answer, but just for the general public, the $680,000 that's being transferred over for, I believe, the right field improvements, is that going to show up as a cost in that fund eventually?
Mayor, council member, whatever, if the item is approved today, any ballpark-related transaction will be recorded in the ballpark fund.
Okay.
And then the general fund resources that are needed to balance that fund would, be handled the way they are similarly now. So it doesn't change the budgeting for the fund, other than we just treat it as a special revenue fund instead of an enterprise fund.
I guess my question, though, and again, thank you, I appreciate that, is that we'll be able to see the entire cost associated with the ballpark is kind of where I'm kind of coming from, regardless of whether it originates in a general fund support role like police or fire, from a security standpoint, but eventually it all ends up in that fund. So we get the true cost, and then at some point there's that transfer from the general fund to make up that subsidy. Is that a fair statement?
Mayor, Councilmember, we believe if we use a special revenue fund, that would be the most transparent, clear way to
Okay.
show the costs of the ballpark operations.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Stipp.
Okay, now I have a follow-up question. And I'm not sure it's related necessarily.
Don't sit down yet.
Sorry, I shouldn't have walked away. My mistake.
No, that's fine. Is this budget transfer related to the repairs that were necessary for the right field, or is this the concession stand upgrades?
Mayor, Council, this budget transfer is associated with the debt service refinancings that we did earlier in the year, and it's just the transfers that are necessary to cover the costs of those refinancings. So it is not specifically, it's specifically related to debt service and the issuance costs, and they will be recovered over the life. For example, the PIC refinancing for the ballpark, the lifetime savings is millions and millions of dollars, but we had to pay upfront costs to actually issue that debt, so that we're just addressing the amounts of issuance costs that had to be paid.
Okay, thanks.
All set? All right, then can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Councilman Stipp made the motion, and Councilman Campbell seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Councilmember Homan.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
So let's go on to the business. And I remember council to refrain from asking questions till the staff presentations are complete and there's a motion on the table. The first item is on the business is the public hearing to consider the amendment to the PV 303 PAD Phase 2. And remember, we're not going to call this to order because this is a public hearing that's been continued from May 8th council meeting. The public hearing was opened at that time and continued, and we will now hear the staff presentation. Karen Craver, Planner 3, to present. Karen?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. PV 303 Phase West 1 is outlined in red on the aerial. It extends from Camelback on the north to Indian School on the south, and from Cotton on the west to the 303 on the east. The two buildings there, the southern one is Sub-Zero, the northern one is Dick's Sporting Goods, and of course REI is now there to the north of that. The current situation is that the city code does not allow for electric fencing unless it's allowed by zoning. And the PV 303 PAD, which is the zoning that governs this property, does not allow electric fencing either. But Dick's Sporting Goods wants to use electric fencing to deter break-ins at their facility. They have contracted with electric guard dog fencing at other locations, and it works very well for them. So they came up with a proposed PAD amendment and developed parameters to allow the fencing. The parameters are that it be integrated into the design of the perimeter wall that's around Dick's Sporting Goods in this case, or any of the other businesses who would want to utilize it. The combined height of the wall and the electric fence should not exceed 10 feet. And of course, they would have to go through a review and approval and permitting process with our Building Safety Division prior to installing the electric fence. And this is a mock-up that they did at Dick's Sporting Goods for us to go out and check out. And where the wall meets the fence there, or the gate on the right-hand side of the picture, you see that pole that extends just above the wall, and you can barely see there are 3 strands of wire that extend out from that pole, and this is the electric fencing. Again, you can see on the gate here those poles that are extended up above the gate itself, very, very thin lines of wire that extend between those poles. This, you can see it a little bit better. And again, just an example of the installation and what that will look like. And as you can see, it's almost, you don't see it. So staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 6-0, recommend approval of these revised parameters to allow electric security fencing within Phase West 1. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? Oh, we do have someone. So if you'll please state your name and address. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor. I'm Michael Pate. I'm with Electric Guard Dog, and I live in Columbia, South Carolina. If you want the specific address, I'll be glad to give it to you. I thought the state would suffice on this one. I was just up here today to make sure that if you had any questions at all about the functionality and the technology of the electric security fences, that I'd be able to answer them. We also have a representative from Dick's Sporting Goods here who can give claim to the attempted break-ins over there, and also the application of electric security fences and alarms in all their other locations. So I'm basically here for educational purposes, so to speak, but I also support the city staff and want to thank them for everything they've done for us.
Thank you for coming forth, and if they have questions, we'll call you back up again.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm going to close this public hearing. And will the city clerk please read Resolution 17-1802 by title only?
Adopt Resolution Number 17-1802, declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the city clerk entitled PV 303 Pad Development Parameters and Uses dated April 12, 2017.
Thank you. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So move.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Campbell and a second by Councilman Holman. Open for council discussion. Councilman Campbell.
I just have one question. If we approve this, are we approving electric fencing in that entire area or just for Dick's Sporting Goods?
It would be within the entire area
Good.
outlined in
Good.
red.
Good. So that each business, once they see how it works, may want to add it. I didn't want them to have to come back before and ask permission to do that. So thank you very much, Karen.
Any other questions? Councilman Pizzillo.
I was going to talk.
I got it right this time, guys. Come on. Enough of that.
General question, can you bring the individual who's responsible for fencing? Because I'm not familiar with this product. Can you just kind of educate me a little bit? I understand it's a deterrent, but the voltage, what does it do as far as if somebody hits the wire? Have you ever had any problems with liability issues, that type of stuff?
Yes, Council, I'd be glad to answer all those questions for you. Basically, it operates on a 12-volt battery. So it's never attached to the infrastructure at all. It's got an energizer. That energizer basically takes that 12 volts and squeezes it to 7,000 volts. It takes 1.3 seconds for that to happen. So in electrical time, that's a long time. So it takes 1.3 seconds to load up that energizer. Once that energizer is loaded, the capacity is 5 joules. It cannot exceed that mechanically. It releases that energy down the interior fence line. There are 2 fences there, and does a quick perimeter check on the entire perimeter in 3/10,000ths of a second. In other words, you'd have to have 20 guards out there to even do that. We come back to an alarm panel, and that alarm panel is looking for a nice, clean return of the energy load. What I'm looking for is 2,500 volts or better. I get a lot of degradation on the line. So if I get less than 2,500 volts for 5 pulses, I'm pulsing once every 1.3 seconds, so you're up there almost to 7 seconds now. I set the alarm off audibly on site and silently back in Columbia, South Carolina, and I go through a call list. So let's say Mayor Lord is number 1 on my call list. I'll call her at 2 o'clock in the morning. Ms. Mayor, you got to break in on the northern perimeter, 220 feet from the northeast corner. I can measure the breaks down to about 10 feet. And hopefully we've incorporated cameras in most of these that we install now, so you can sit at home with your Wi-Fi, bring it up, look at it and say, hey, we had a little storm out, knocked a tree over, a piece of landscaping, took out the fence. Let's lock it up, guys, and go back to bed. Or I got 5 guys in a flatbed truck and some hoodies on and they'll rob me blind. Please call the local police department. It's called a verified alarm. Police love verified alarms because they know there's some action out there and they can go get somebody. As far as liability is concerned, I own the fence. It's just like ADT owns the alarm panels in your home and everything else. I basically rent it out on a monthly fee. I monitor it, I maintain it, I install it, and I keep it in good working order. That's what we do.
There's a voltage to a level that it will deter somebody from going over the top of it?
Yeah, if you touch it, you're going to go back. I mean, if you're familiar with cattle fences, livestock fences, there are all these naked wires all over the country laying out there to contain livestock. There's never, ever been a serious injury or death of those things. Now, that's not to say that it will not surprise you if you touch it. You will not do it again. And that's basically what we're trying to do, is prevent a break-in. It husbands police resources. Police don't have to go out there every other day and check on a break-in, wasting the money of Goodyear, having to file a report, investigating things like that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Back to liability, I got a $6 million umbrella policy that I handle on, that I use to cover every site I have. I've got over 4,000 in America.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Stipp?
So the photos that we saw that have the block wall that shows the electric fence on the inside perimeter wall?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So if whoever the individual is can get over the outside and over the top, it's getting back out that becomes...
Well, because of the height, the 10 feet, they're not coming in over the top.
Right. But
and because you have walls here as opposed to chain link, where most people will go cut a piece of chain link and go down low, with that wall up there, it's very difficult, no matter how athletic and what good shape you're in, to jump with your feet from 10 feet and hit the ground and not hurt yourself.
Right.
But if they did that, they'd be trapped inside.
Okay. So this is all interior, so we don't have to worry about accidental...
That's correct. It's a two-fence system. So you already have a permitted wall and or fence that's permitted by the city of Goodyear. We go in and permit the second one inside of that one.
Cool.
Thank you.
Can I get one for my house?
Not allowed to install in residential areas.
Thank you very much for the information. We
Thank you,
greatly
Mayor Ward.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, Council, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Councilmember Homan,
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Can I vote?
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you. I vote.
All
Passes
right, let's
6-0.
go on. Will the city clerk please read ordinance 17-1348?
Adopt ordinance number 17-1348, providing for an amendment to the development parameters applicable to I-1 light industrial development within Phase West 1 of the PV 303 planned area development, generally located between SR 303 on the east and Cotton Lane on the west, and between Camelback Road on the north and Indian School Road on the south, amending the zoning map of the city of Goodyear, providing for corrections, severability, non-abridgment, and effective date and penalties.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Holman and a second by Councilman Campbell. Open for council discussion. I think we've pretty much cleared that, right? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Councilmember Homan,
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Let's go to 7.2 on the business item to consider the IGA with Maricopa County Library Operations. Nathan Torres, Parks and Recreation Director, to present. Nathan?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We are here this evening to seek approval of an IGA between the Maricopa County Library District and the City of Goodyear for the continuance of Goodyear Library operations. As you are aware, we have enjoyed a great partnership with Maricopa County since 2009. However, the current IGA is set to expire on June 30th. And joining us this evening, we have representing the Maricopa County Library District, Erin McFarland. She's the library administrator. Erin? So tonight we'll talk a little bit about the history of library operations, library by the numbers. We'll look at current operations, future operations, and then staff recommendation for the IGA. This is a reflection of key milestones of library operations with Maricopa County. You can see to the right, June 2017, the current IGA is set to expire, which is why we are here this evening. At the work session on January 30th, 2017, staff presented options to continue library operations. At this time, council provided consensus to establish a new IGA with Maricopa County to continue operating the library. This chart compares operation in our old space to the most recent year, completed full year in our new space. And when I look at these numbers, I have to pinch myself because they're quite extraordinary. If you look at the number of annual visitors, 140,000 people, nearly 140,000 people are visiting the library on an annual basis. That is a big number. That's a 50% increase in comparison to the old space. Program attendance, 228% increase, over 15,000 people participating in library programs. If you look at the circulation number, a 69% increase. We are now circulating over 405,000 items from our library. Residents are highly satisfied with the library operations, and 93% satisfied with programs and activities. 88% rated the library services as above average or excellent. And it doesn't end there. They tell us they have all the books that I like. The programs for kids are great. They like the fact that it's interconnected with other libraries. Again, we have a branch library that's operated by the county, and that connects to 17 other libraries countywide, so that brings a wealth of resources with it. So currently, Maricopa County is responsible for funding and managing library operations. This includes covering all operational costs, staffing, circulation, equipment, maintenance, and programming. Goodyear is responsible for providing the facility and facility maintenance. Now, this model is in line with the county's program to help smaller communities under 50,000 have startup library operations. And as you all know, that we are well over the 50,000 mark in terms of population, yet the county has continued to fund operations for us. However, as you are aware, Goodyear was notified that the county would no longer fund operations after June 30th, 2017. So, Mayor and Council, with the current IGA expiring, two options were presented and considered during the work session on January 30th. These included option one, to remain with Maricopa County under a new IGA, or option two, transition to a Goodyear operated library. While there was council consensus to pursue option one, I will provide a brief overview of both options. So option one entails remaining with Maricopa County Library District under a new IGA. Under this agreement, Maricopa County would continue to operate the library. However, Goodyear would be responsible for funding the operations plus 10% of overhead. The estimated total cost for that operations that Goodyear would be responsible for this upcoming fiscal year is $774,000. It's important to note that this amount is included in tonight's tentative budget. In addition to the annual cost of the operations, Goodyear will be required to establish an asset management plan for the computers and other items in the library. However, this would not take place until fiscal year 19. Just some additional considerations. This option allows for continuity of services to our users and our residents, as well as provides for continued access to Maricopa County's resources, materials, programs, and of course their expertise. Option two, considered transitioning to a Goodyear library, a Goodyear operated library. This option required a two-phased approach. The cost for this approach was $919,000 for year one, which included Maricopa County operations, as well as the costs associated with the transition. And then year two, the cost would be $882,000, which includes the cost for the city operating the library. Some things that you considered at the work session were loss of library expertise. if the city was to do it on its own. Again, the library, this is what they do. Our Maricopa County, this is what they do. They operate 17 libraries countywide. It would result in reduced convenient access to materials and borrowing networks that we currently enjoy with the county. And then, of course, all of the users and card holders would have to be switched over, and so they'd have to reapply for new cards if we were to take over the operations. So here's a side-by-side. Again, the recommendation and the consensus in the work session was to pursue an IGA, option 1, and you can see how those line up side by side. Option 1 is the most cost-effective, provides the library expertise with the county, continuity of services, and convenient access to materials. So in conclusion, we are asking that you consider approval of an IGA with Maricopa County District for the operation of the Goodyear Branch Library. Some of the key terms are listed here. And with that, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. A nice presentation. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? Then, can I have a motion and a second to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the Maricopa County Library District for the operations of the Goodyear Branch Library? The IGA will cover the period of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2022, with an option to renew for one additional 5-year term. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I heard a motion from Councilman Holman and a second from Councilman Campbell. Open for council discussions. Councilman Bazillo. He had his finger up first.
No. You know, I think it's great. You hear all the day with everybody doing their Game Boys and their phones and their iPads and, you know, on the internet without the interaction, and you see the numbers that are coming out of our library, and they're just fantastic. The fact that you have all of the various programs, you know, for kids and adults, and they're actually going to the library with all this efforts. All I can say is that is fantastic. Keep up the great work. And I'm definitely in favor of this. Thank you.
Councilman Stipp.
I see Sarah sitting out there. You know, one of the greatest things we get to do as a council is provide, you know, amenities, et cetera, for the community. There's no greater satisfaction than I have to support bringing the library operations under us in conjunction and cooperation with the Maricopa County Library District. There is no better partner to do that. I am so grateful that we have that. Nathan, your staff, and you obviously have cultivated a great relationship. And I'm excited to support this, and I'm glad to see the construction is underway and we're getting that done. It's been a long time coming, and I know everyone else has got comments, but yay.
Thank you.
Councilman Osborne. You did.
You know what? When we had that work session, we went over such, information, and, I'm thrilled. I'm glad that we're staying partners. I think it makes sense, and so thank you very much.
Councilman Campbell.
I'm excited. We're going to increase hours, and we're going to, of course, we have to pass the budget first, but we want to increase the hours, and we want to be open on Sunday so that we can reach even more of our residents, and it's great.
Councilman Holman.
Well, Sarah, I want to thank you for the amazing foundation you established in our library, because that was a building, the building blocks, and it must be very rewarding to see that it has continued, that the foundation you established continued to grow, because that's the sign of a leader, is that even when you're gone, your efforts are continue to show. I love the libraries that have a partnership with the county, because the access to books is so tremendous. And with the system in place as it is today, it is so prompt. There's not the long delay. So I am excited to approve this new IGA.
Well, nothing more to say. You've all said it, but it's even going to be more improved when we finish the exterior And we'll have places for people to sit outside the library and be able to read outside when the weather calls for it. So let's call for a vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, Council, it's 6:46. Thank you very much. And we have the two next things on are going to take a little bit of time, and we're going to break at 7 to have a snack, but I'm going to have you take a break now at this time at 6:46.
Okay, thanks.
And so 15 minutes will do it?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break.
So, whoever's in charge of our Make Your Difference.
All right, we're now on 7.3 on the business item to consider the consent agreement for the major improvements to the Goodyear Ballpark and Recreational Complex. Doug Sandstrom, Finance Director, to presenting. Doug?
Mayor, members of the council, standing before you tonight, presenting Resolution 171807, which would be approving the substantially final agreement with the Indians. The item before you is the agreement associated with a $10.5 million expansion of the Indians Clubhouse. That expansion we talked about at the last council meeting on the 8th, where the financing was all approved by the council for us to move forward with filling out the forms and so on, leading up to a close at the end of the month. And as stated, this agreement would cover the areas of how the facility is used, how the payback is, and so forth. And we're here to talk about that this evening. The expansion itself, as I stated, was 16,000 square feet. It includes strength training, equipment, kitchen, office space, physical therapy, and physical rehabilitation. The purpose from the Indians' point of view of this expansion is that it's going to allow for more of a year-round use and an expanded spring training presence at the facility. They will hold fall strength and conditioning camps. They will have an extended off-season following spring training and increased utilization of the rehabilitation components of that. And then also with the expansion of the office space, they would have a better ability to handle some of the back of the house staff that would be here during spring training. So you'd see a lot more activity at the stadium during spring training and so on. One of the items that we did talk about with the Indians is the use of the PIC as opposed to their own private financing allows them to accommodate this project now as opposed to 3 or 5 years from now. It's relatively a little bit cheaper on the interest rate side because it is through the PIC. It is a taxable instrument. And then one other thing with this project going forward right now, it will generate about $220,000 in construction sales tax for the city when we look at a $10.5 million expansion. The financing for this is through our PIC, which is the Public Improvement Corporation. Council approved all the documentation on that on the 8th. However, we would need this agreement passed before we would close on the 31st. And it is May 31st that we are planning on the close of this. It is a private bank loan. We sent out RFPs to 25 different banks. We received 5 proposals back with interest rates ranging from 3.42% all the way up to 5.45%. The item that was chosen through the PIC was the lowest interest rate item of 3.42%. It is a 10-year payback schedule. That rate is 3.42% from Bank of America. The financing under a 10-year term would have a final payment of July 1st, 2027, which is within the existing term of the agreement. So this loan would be paid off about 2 years prior to the ending of the current use agreement contract with the Indians, which expires on December 31st, 2029. The estimated annual debt service, and I say estimated because we will not lock in a rate until after we have agreement of this so that we can move forward to closing. The estimated debt service is about $1.28 million a year. The consent agreement that you have before you and that the action for tonight does have the Indians paying for 100% of the cost of the expansion and all financing. How that would be paid for is the city will retain 100% of any spring training revenue that would be going to the Indians. If there is a shortfall on that, they would make a deficiency payment to the city by mid-June. If there's an overage in the amount of spring training revenue, the city would retain that and apply it as a credit for the following year's debt service. If For instance, that there was a deficiency and the Indians did not make the required payment according to the agreement, there is a $10,000 penalty that would be instituted within 30 days of that late payment. And then after that, the use agreement takes precedent for the remedies of the Indians being in default. So the city is protected to the extent possible. The ongoing costs associated with the loan, which would be a city administration cost, my time, the accounting staff's time on recording the debt service, paying annual payments and so on, is built into the original cost of issuance of the loan. We are charging a city administrative fee equal to $1,000 per year to cover that. So they would be paying the entire $10,000 upfront as part of the closing of the loan. The only other operational cost associated with this is there's an annual trustee fee of about $3,000. They're the ones that actually monitor and hold the debt service payments for us. That is also for the entire 10 years built into the upfront cost so that we can make sure that 100% of the cost is covered by the Indians. Again, the financing is fully contained within the term of the existing agreement. The expansion area is specifically called out in the agreement as not being covered under our existing capital replacement plan with the Indians. So the Indians will be maintaining and upkeeping that on their own, separate from the dedicated funding that we have for CapEx. And then when the construction project starts, the city will be involved in that in being able to review and approve any construction as it goes through to make sure that it falls in line with our construction quality and matching of our facilities out at the stadium. I do have bond counsel as well as our financial advisor here for any more detailed questions that I can answer, but with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
And would you like to wait for them to come after we've done the motion to come to speak? All right, just want to make sure. So will the city clerk please read a resolution 17-1807 by title only, please?
Adopt resolution number 17-1807, approving the substantially final form of a consent for major improvements to the City of Goodyear ballpark and recreational complex, delegating authority to complete the consent agreement and authorizing and directing the appropriate city officials to execute and deliver the finalized consent agreement.
Thank you. Could I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Stiff and a second by Councilman Holman. Open for council discussion. Councilman Stiff.
Doug, I obviously was not here last month during the presentation, so I may have a couple of questions that you may have previously answered, and I apologize for that. But you said there is no financial exposure for the city in this agreement. Is that correct?
There is limited financial exposure. It is a contingent liability of the cities. If the Indians do not make the payments to us, the city must make the debt service payments.
Okay. But we will always, through this agreement, we will always retain the full amount of the Indians' portion of the season ticket. So the only way that we don't collect something is if the Indians don't play ball.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
As far as benefits to the city itself, you talked about the $220,000 or $225,000 in construction sales tax.
Sales tax.
We talk about this being adding to the more year-round use of the facility, and it certainly wouldn't make any financial sense for us to embark on a financial study. But do we have an indication of what other benefits this might bring to the community?
Generally speaking, as you said, we have not performed a complete impact study of this at all. With the expanded presence of the Indian with an earlier fall conditioning and strength training place, it would be more baseball players here for a longer period of time, and that would translate into additional hotel nights, eating at our restaurants, just more activity out there. The longer we have people here, the better that would be.
Okay, and we don't have any sense of...
None whatsoever.
Okay. But there is some, I guess that's direct, but some direct and indirect benefit to the community as well. in a way, I was thankful I wasn't going to be at the meeting on the 8th, because I thought that was going to be it, and I wouldn't have to come forward. It's kind of the chicken way out. But as I thought about this, it makes it. It seems as though the city is, for lack of a better phrase, giving away the farm. That we're just becoming a pass through for this expansion of the ball club. And there's part of you that just doesn't sound right or doesn't feel right. But at the end of the day, and I think I may have said it when I was speaking to someone today, in for a penny, in for a pound. And we've enjoyed a great partnership with both of our ball clubs, the Indians and the Reds. And this is just another function of that. We're at very limited financial exposure. We're recouping additional costs from the administrative fees, et cetera, that come through it. And if we're looking to expand with the ball clubs, and we're looking to make use of our facility, which I still say is probably one of the I know it is one of the premier facilities, but we are also the number one user of our baseball complex in the Cactus League. And for that, I think we need to support the expansion of the club facilities for the Indians.
Councilman Pizzillo. Thank you, Councilman Stitt.
I realize there's been a lot of effort placed into this, and I tend to agree to a certain extent on Councilmember Stipp that there is some value and we have a great partnership. My disappointment was that our original, because I was here at that previous meeting, my disappointment is that we have this great partnership. We have an original contract on the ballpark that expires in 20 years with 2 5-year options, but we're paying debt on it for 25. So and again, I wasn't here when that deal was cut, so don't shoot me for that. My point was, I was hoping because of this partnership is that we could get the Indians to step up and try to lock it in for the remaining 15. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't get something out of for doing that, but because what happens is with our Tourist and Sports Authority, and we'll probably be paying $9-some-odd million for the 5 years that the extension will be in, it would have been nice to take that type of burden off future councils off the table to have to be dealing with that specific issue. Because in my opinion, and I could be wrong and I have no crystal ball, but I was looked down the road and I look at that 5-year extension. When you're negotiating a 5-year extension, when you're still paying the debt service, it's probably not a great position to be in. So from my perspective, I was hoping this was an excellent opportunity. I didn't see it as a construction sales tax or the value of the expansion. I was looking at whose money you're going to use. Is it city money or their money? And there was value, obviously, in using city money, and I was hoping we could come to an agreement for that. And that's where I was coming from in our previous meeting, and that's where I was hoping that we would have been able to tie those two together. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you for your opinion on this side. Any questions? Councilman Campbell?
Thank you. I'm excited about this because when Ryan Lance appeared before our council at our last meeting, he was very encouraging with the fact that they would be able to bring up more players to participate in training and therapy and whatever they needed to do by enlarging their facilities. And it sounded like to me that it would be a year-round activity with probably twice as many, if not more, folks involved in that building. So I am excited for them. I think it's a wonderful thing for us to do because they're going to win the World Series this year, you guys. So we better be ready. They're on their way. They are on their way. So I'm in favor of doing this.
Councilman Osborne?
Well, I'm quite frankly very torn over it. And when I was here with the last meeting, I had said that I was looking for that extra 5 years. And I thought that was a solidifying of our partnership. And I believe that this is a great opportunity for the Indians. I mean, this is a business deal that most businesses would really be happy to have, and I think it's great. I also think it does benefit the city, and Councilmember Stipp articulated that well. It does, and we continue to grow together, but it's difficult in a negotiating type of stance when we hit that term, and so I recognize that completely as what Councilmember Pizzillo is saying. So, you know, I really am torn here. I haven't decided, quite frankly, which way I want to go here, because it is good, yet there's some leverage that we lose as a city, and that's really not a leverage just for the city. It's for what we do for our citizens, and that's, as council people, what we're supposed to be doing, is looking out for the best way to spend our money and partnership with many entities for the benefit of our citizens and of our city. So that's why I'm torn, because I do see both sides of what the discussion is here. And I'm going to have to make that decision in like 2 seconds. So,
Any other? I'd just like to comment, they've been great partners with us, with Community Southwest building apartments or rentals and or permanent residents. We're building a real big community there. We're going to get people that are from Ohio staying there half of the year, buying these. We're going to have so many more young people in the city during all of these times that the team call the other players in. I see nothing but positive on this. I think that what's assuring to me is that we have honored keeping the stadium up. We have anything that has gone wrong that we're responsible for, we've taken care of it. And that's where they made a mistake in Florida, is they didn't do that, and the place deteriorated, and they lost the worth. And I don't think we're doing that. I think we're doing the right direction. So I'm really pleased this came before us. So I'm definitely going to vote for this. So, okay, so no more discussion. So roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stipp. Aye. Councilmember Homan.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
nay.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Nay.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes.
Could you call the vote to that? What was it, please?
4-2.
Thank you. Okay. All right, don't see anything from the lawyers, so we're going to 7.4 to consider authorizing special revenue fund for the ballpark. And we have Rebecca Chitwood, Controller, to present. Rebecca?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm here to ask you to adopt Ordinance 17-1353 to authorize the commitment of ballpark revenues to be utilized for ballpark operations. Starting with fiscal year 2017, we'll be reclassifying ballpark operations from an enterprise with the intent to make it a special revenue fund. Since 2007, ballpark operations have been presented in the financial reports as an enterprise fund. Enterprise funds are generally used for business-type activities that recover 100% of their costs, such as water, wastewater, or airports. With ballpark operations being presented as a special revenue fund, it will allow for greater transparency to our citizens. To classify the financial activity as a special revenue fund, accounting standards require the commitment of revenues to be imposed by formal action of the organization's highest level of decision-making authority. This reclassification of fund type has been reviewed and approved by our current financial auditors. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Thank you, Rebecca. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anyone in the audience like to speak? All right, then would the city clerk please, excuse me, please read Ordinance 17-1353 by title only.
Adopt Ordinance Number 17-1353, authorizing the commitment of ballpark revenues to be utilized for ballpark operations and authorizing all budget transfers and administrative actions necessary for this authorization.
Thank you. Could I have a motion, a second?
So move.
Second.
Who over here? Motion by Councilman Campbell and a second by Councilman Pizzillo. Open for council discussion. Councilman Pizzillo?
I think it's a great move because it'll give us more transparency in the cost of what it takes to operate the stadium. My only suggestion would be and again, I guess money is always an issue, is there are things at some point that may not be covered in the original contract, and I imagine replacing seats and things like that are not part of it because over time, because of an outdoor stadium, those are things that wear over time that, if possible, we create some type of a replacement fund within that fund to, like we have with other replacement funds, to try to cover anything that's not in there that we think down the road that's going to need to be replaced because we're now, 8 years in, and around the 10, 11, 12 year, 13 year, some of those things start coming up. So just some fuel for thought on as you build that fund. But no, I think this is a great idea. Thank you.
Councilman Stipp?
I like the idea. I'm just trying to get my head around, are we doing this only on, we're doing away with the entire enterprise account? Is that how I'm reading this? So how will the reporting of this be more transparent than the enterprise account?
The debt service part of the ballpark will be split into a debt service fund, and so just the operations will be presented in the special revenue fund.
Okay, so how does that, tell me how that becomes more transparent.
The cost of operating the ballpark would be separated out from the long-term debt service that pays for the ballpark.
So in the past, we've been showing that all as one.
Yes, and the enterprise fund.
Okay, thanks.
Wait,
Yeah,
Joe.
go ahead.
Anybody on this side have a question? All right, Councilman Pizzillo?
Yeah, but in reality, you're talking about the long-term debt. You're talking about the $100 and some million one, but the one that was just approved tonight is going to show up in this fund because you're taking the you're paying it through the revenues that are coming in. Is that a fair and accurate statement?
I would have to review that. I am not completely aware of that agreement, so.
Doug's stepping up.
Councilmember Pizzol, yes, the answer to that is correct because this is a retaining of the revenue. The revenue and the expenditure will all be shown in the overall special revenue fund.
So the only real difference, to be honest with you, when you talk about transparency, is any of those general fund transfers that have got to go in to meet the operating shortfall. That's going to be one transfer, and then any of those transfers that have to deal with that $100 and some million debt or the $9.1 million debt payment, that will come in. You'll see two line items or from a summary standpoint. So you'll see the detail of operations and then you'll see detail of that debt transfer. Is that a fair analogy? High level?
That is correct. And then the other thing that would make it more transparent is under an enterprise fund, you go through the process of showing depreciation and showing of the assets. As a special revenue fund, it will not be that. It'll just be straight up what is how much are we spending to replace that fiscal year and so on, so we can very clearly see a hard number.
Yeah, and that's why I like the approach. Thank you.
All set? Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holman?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne? Aye. Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
All right, we're going to go to the next item, and that is to consider adopting the fiscal 18 tentative budget and the financial policies. And Lori Wigenroth, Budget Research Manager, will be presenting. Lori?
Thank you. As the mayor stated, we're here to request you approve the tentative budget as well as the revisions to the financial policies. We'll also be presenting to you the compliance relative to the financial policies in the tentative budget that we're presenting. And I'll remind everybody that the tentative budget establishes the maximum level, a maximum budget. We have two more steps in this process. The next step will be the final adoption at the end of June. Between now and then, we cannot increase the total budget that would be adopted today. So essentially, we're going to go through a presentation in a few parts. First, just kind of go through the calendar and the process that has gotten us to here and what's left to do. On April 10th and April 17th, we presented a draft budget. I'll go through a summary of the changes from that presentation to what is in this tentative budget, and then kind of give you a high-level summary of the dollars and cents of the tentative budget. And then we'll finish with reviewing the financial policies and the changes that we're recommending there. So in terms of the calendar that has gotten us to here, the first thing I'll do is kind of talk about the public process that's happened in these meetings with the council. You've spent about 13 hours in public meetings. The first step in that was reviewing the beginning balance, which is a significant one-time resource for preparing the FY18 budget. And the next step in the process was to present to you the general fund forecast and initial revenue forecast. And essentially those same revenue and forecasts have held up throughout the year as we've moved forward. In March, we presented to you all of the funding requests that were received through both the CIP process as well as the operating, what we call the supplemental budget process. So in the CIP process, departments identified new projects. They may have identified changes to existing projects in terms of cost or funding. And in the operating budget process, those supplementals are desired changes or requested changes to the ongoing or one-time operating budget. And so we did present all of that information to you. And then we came to you in April in two separate meetings to present a recommended draft budget, first to discuss those for the enterprise funds, and then next to review those for the general fund. And then in addition, our Human Resources Department presented compensation information during the month of April. After our meeting on the 17th, we held the public budget open house. We used a different forum this year than we have in past years. In past years, we've done a presentation and then about what the city had accomplished, what was in the upcoming budget. This year, we offered an open house. We had boards set up, and we allowed people came in, and we spoke with them, let them roam around, and made it more personal and had more interaction with the attendees. And I believe it was well received. And that brings us to today. The last steps are the formal adoption steps that are essentially following the state law for adopting the city's budget. So today, we're reviewing the tentative budget and the financial policies, as I mentioned previously. June 26th would be the final adoption of the budget and the required truth and taxation hearing related to our primary property tax levy. And then on July 11th, we'd do the property tax levy. Essentially now we know it's in June. There would be two budget-related publications, which are basically advertising the tentative budget, and then two truth and taxation property tax-related publications. So that's kind of the public process, the public discussion of the budget. In the background on the staff process, there is routine monitoring of the budget throughout the year. We do monthly financial reporting to the council, and that means we're doing monthly variance analysis of department operating budgets and the revenues that are coming in. We use that information that we're learning during the current year during the process to develop the next year's base budget. And we also conduct a base budget process where we work with the department to prepare estimates for next year and look for opportunities to absorb cost increases that they may be experiencing. We do very technical reviews at that stage, and just as a reminder, when we talked to you on April 17th, we reviewed kind of the budget process in more depth, and we noted that we'd identified about $450,000 in technical reductions to the base budget over the last 2 years. We also performed technical reviews of those CIP requests, and the engineering department is involved in those as well. And then the executive management team is also involved in review and oversight of the budget as we're coming to you with more information. Another piece that's important to the budget in terms of controlling our costs, finding ways to keep our costs down, to keep the budget from growing larger than need, are a lot of the emphasis that we have on process improvement through the lean exercises and other efforts. All city employees are trained, have basic training in the lean process. And this program's been in effect for a little less than 2 years. And in that time frame, we've identified about $20,000 in hard cost reductions. The most significant of those was a $12,000 one-time saving for a network item with the police department and IT. There were about $393,000 in soft cost avoidance. Now, soft cost is something like saving staff time. So, for example, maybe you can find a way to do a process with fewer steps or with fewer people. And we can also avoid future funding requests for staffing. And a good example of that is in our engineering department. I think we've talked before about the steps they did to streamline processes, look at the steps in a process, look at the quality of work coming out of each process. And they were able to eliminate or repurpose a permit tech to a needed civil engineer that they've been requesting through the budget process previously. And then anytime we reduce cycle times or improve the quality, our customers experience that as well. And there is, in your materials that you received, there's one of the tabs has the materials that we presented at that at the budget open house about the lean program, so that there's more details of that available. So to move into the changes in the budget, in your materials there was a tab for changes from the draft budget. This does not go through all of those changes here, but what we were trying to pull out are the significant organizational or dollar changes that are presented. We are moving the development coordinator position from the finance department to the city manager's office. There were additional updates to the pension rates and the benefit rates, primarily due to rates that changed from when we began the process of costing the supplemental position requests. We got new information on pension rates after those initial cost estimates. In terms of supplementals in the budget, we've made several changes as a result of the conversations that happened on the 10th and the 17th of April. One was there was discussion about the community paramedicine program. That's currently funded by partner agencies or partner entities. And there was a substantial discussion about the importance of that program. So we've added $150,000 to the contingency so that should partners not fund that program next year, we would have the capacity in our budget to continue that program. And of course, all uses of the contingency come back to the council, so that would come back to you before those resources were actually allocated to that purpose if needed. The next item that was added in response to the conversations on the 17th was that we are increasing the number of issues of the In Focus magazine to 12 issues per year. We're adding a component to the police department similar to the behavioral health services that are provided to the fire areas. And then we did have a department request to remove a supplemental. The engineering department has determined that the GPS units that they requested are probably not the most efficient way to do their job, so they've asked that supplemental be removed. And just in summary, there was also a lot of supplementals in the budget that were already in that emphasized your focus on recreation and public safety. We haven't called those out because we've covered them multiple times before, but just as a reminder, there's a patrol squad added, a police assistant, telecommunication operators, a summer recreation program is added, as Councilwoman Campbell mentioned earlier. There's also an expansion of library hours. So all of those kind of focus on the high priority areas that we heard from the council as we moved through the budget process. Changes in the capital improvement program as a result of the conversations that have happened in the last budget meetings. There will be pickleball courts added at Goodyear Community Park. That's 6 courts at that location. A softball field, a new softball field rather than converting an existing field, would be added at Straya Foothills Park. There would be 2 additional monument signs located around the city. And a more technical add is the need to move the city's employee health clinic, and so we're providing $51,000 in the budget to accomplish that. Another kind of significant change from the conversation that occurred was there was a desire to advance the street project on Saraville from Jefferson to Yuma. That project was programmed later in the capital improvement program. In order to advance that project, we needed to allocate $1.1 million in general funds for the project. And then we've needed to defer a project that was in next year for the CIP, or for the general funded CIP, to do intersection improvements at Bullard and Van Buren. And those would be deferred approximately 2 years, and that's how it's reflected in the current CIP. And in addition, in this year's budget, or in last year's budget, FY16, you approved a loan of general funds to the same impact fee fund where this road is also funded. And so we would delay the repayment from that impact fee fund back to the general fund because we are again advancing another project. So the impact fees will not be, we'll be able to pay for the prior project, but we'll still have to have impact fees for, or a loan for the new project. And with the changes to the capital program as well as to the rest of the budget, it required a reduction in the capital project reserve, which was a new recommendation that we included in the April 17th presentation. The capital project reserve recognizes that there are upcoming needs in the program to support projects like the recreation campus projects where there's some off-site work that needs to be performed. It also recognizes the need for future loans as we're advancing other impact fee funded projects. And then it gives us the capacity, should we come upon a project, sometimes there's projects that aren't yet cited. And so if you were going to build a fire station, we can cost the fire station, but if we don't know exactly where it'll be located, there may be off-site requirements that we didn't know when we prepared that cost estimate. So it'd give us the capability to deal with some of those unknown costs. I skipped one. So that was the general fund changes to the operating budget and the capital budget. There's just some minor changes, minor in a way, but not minor. We did move the CAP drought contingency out of the water department's budget where we had presented it previously, and we put it in what we call the non-departmental budget. So it's in the same location as the city manager's contingency. It is still using water funds. It's just that way it's not in the water department budget, so we're certain that there will be an action coming forward to council if that should need to be used. There was also, as part of the funding for the surface water plant, there was a recommendation that we use long-term storage credits as one of the funding sources. And so essentially what we're doing is instead of using long-term storage credits that we already have, we're just not buying the ones in the FY18 budget and the FY19 budget. So we're just, all that we've done is move the budget that was planned in the operating budget to buy CAP water next year. We've moved that to the CIP project and reduced the bonding requirement for the CIP project. So the CIP project remains at $114.2 million. So this is just a technical correction to implement how we described that project would be funded. There's also a few changes related to carryovers from what was presented on the 10th and the 17th. Originally, the fire department had requested carryover of their physical or medical exams. That was in an environment where they were working on getting a new vendor, and we were unsure of the timing of how the physicals would work. We now know what the cost will be under the new vendor, and we don't require the funding next year to be to complete all of the physicals. There's actually an error on this slide. I apologize. That reducing the 10-acre site was incorrect. That was my error. I misread something. So ignore that line. It's not a change. The fire department had funded this year some new exhaust systems to remove fumes from the bays. They went through a process to try to procure those and were not successful. In addition, there's funding in the FY18's budget for some additional costs associated with those. So those funds are being carried over so they can be joined together and the project can move forward. The City Hall entrance was left out in error. And then we had to make revisions to because of the change to advance the Saraville project, we had to change some of the carryover related to the loan on the existing Saraville project. So we've essentially moved the carryover all into impact fees instead of having it partly funded in general funds, since we need those general funds to continue the loan. So that's kind of a summary of the major changes. In terms of the dollars and the cents, just quickly run through, it's a $254 million or $255 million total budget. About slightly under 40% of that is the general fund, but essentially this provides you information on the budget by funding source. The uses here are higher than what you just saw in terms of revenues. Those were the revenues. The difference is the use of fund balance. That makes up the balance of the funding to get to the $320 million. So I misspoke a moment ago. The $320 million is the budget. The $254 million is the revenues that support it. This year, the budget is slightly lopsided towards the CIP from prior years. Primarily due to the first year of the surface water treatment plant project. There's about $30 million in FY18 CIP for that particular project. So it just slightly changes kind of the relationship we typically see. So that $320 million budget is a $66 million increase from the current year budget. And that's primarily due, $55 million of that increase is related to capital projects. It's the $30 million for the surface water plant that I just mentioned, the $10.5 million for the Indians baseball project that was just discussed, and another $9.5 million for fire stations. Those are the major reasons that the CIP, those are the big new projects or the big increased projects in the CIP. The operating and maintenance budget is about $9 million higher than this year's budget, and that's about a 50-50 split between supplementals and compensation increases. This is a look at the general fund portion of the budget, and this includes the general fund includes also those asset management funds that we are talking about regularly. So this gives you a picture of the sources that go into that budget. Again, we're using about a $50 million worth of fund balance. The general fund, essentially that's that beginning balance that we talked about. It's the savings in this year's budget. And then it's also the carryovers that are basically budgeted this year that will not happen, and they're causing cost savings this year that becomes next year's beginning balance. This shows you the uses of the general fund. Almost 60% goes to day-to-day operations. And you'll note here I'm showing $148.1 million is the total, but the actual adopted budget will be $137.1 million. The reason there's a difference there is you don't actually appropriate the transfer part of the budget. So that's the transfer. Essentially, that transfers out number is the transfer to the ballpark fund and the transfer to the HERF fund to support those funds. So the general fund is about $11.9 million or 4.7% higher than this year's general fund budget. And that increase comes from essentially $9.8 million in supplemental budget, supplementals, including $3.5 million in ongoing and $6.3 in one time. And then there's about a $4.3 million increase that's associated with compensation and pension increases. And then that's offset because CIP projects are lower this year are in FY18 than in FY17. And then just a little bit more information. I think I skipped a slide. The CIP, this is the FY18 part of the CIP. So next year's CIP has $102.9 million. And as I mentioned earlier, that's unusually high because of that water project. And you'll see that's why there's a big chunk of that pie as that bluish color is related to the water project. So the key projects in the CIP for next year include that surface water project, those 2 fire stations that I mentioned earlier, the design of the recreation campus, the aquatic facility, the recreation center, and the 30-acre park are funded in next year. And of course, those are some exciting projects that will then be funded for construction in the subsequent year. There's several street projects, there's traffic signals, and there's some wells in the water program. And here's the total CIP over the 10 years. It's heavily loaded towards the front for 2 reasons, that water plant project, and then our impact fees only have a 10-year window. And so the last several years of this plan won't be updated until we complete the impact fee study that is about to begin. So I can go on to the financial policies piece.
Do you want to ask a question? This is because there's
Yeah,
a lot of information, so I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to refer to any questions you have at this point.
Yeah, I would think that this might be the time to talk about budget questions before we talk about the financial policies. Either that or we're going to end up going back like 20 slides. So
yeah,
I guess the choice is yours.
It's totally up to you. There's not that many slides in financial policies, and some of them are.
So you want the financial?
But I'm happy to go
take
take the break now.
All right, go ahead and finish.
Okay. So the financial policies underlie the budget recommendations that we have before you. And just as a reminder, they're based on kind of an attitude of fiscal conservatism. They're about being able to pay our bills, being able to have a balanced budget, being prepared to pay for the future. So something like our PIC set-asides and our operating cost set-asides kind of help with that long-run outlook. And they're about us being able to deliver the services that are truly needed in the community. They are, I don't know if that's me or, they're about flexibility so that the city's poised if there should be an economic problem that we're ready to go. And we continue to adhere to the highest accounting and management practices. Just some key areas of compliance, and again, there's in your book, all the financial policies are laid out. There are items in blue, which are basically reporting on the compliance of that item relative to the FY18 tentative budget. And there's some items on red, which are proposed changes. Kind of the key components of compliance are that the property tax rate will remain below the $1.78 combined rate. And we will be issuing $25 million in bonds within that capacity. We are in compliance with the debt coverage ratios, and we are using property tax and there is what is not a prohibited item in the financial policies, but there's an inconsistency with prior practice, which is using $7.5 million in GO bonds in that surface water project. We are recommending a few changes to the policies. One is reducing the general fund contingency to 15% of the operating revenue. That's about the same as using 2 months of the operating expense. The prior policy was at 3 months operating expense. The FY18 budget is not as low as the 15%, but it is not at the prior level of the 3 months. But we maintained it at the $17.8 million that's currently budgeted. It could be dropped as low as $13.4 million if we wanted to go all the way down to the 15% mark initially. There's a recommended rewording of a policy. Grab my, which is policy 7, which talks about we should comply with laws and policies. But the examples that are provided are all about laws, so we're just recommending striking the words about it being related to policies. We're also changing to the use of the word wastewater instead of the word sewer throughout. And then we're recommending that the strategic plan is not really a budgetary control system as it's presented in policy 10, and it really is much more global than a financial policy. So we're recommending that be removed. And we're also recommending we remove the policy with regard to community relations as a budgetary control item. That program has not been adjusted. It really is the purview of each council to decide how they would like to fund a program area such as that. And it's kind of complex to calculate a 2-year average every time you want to try to look at that item. And with that, I'll entertain your questions.
Thank you very much. I do have 2 speaker cards, and before I call the people up, each speaker, you're limited to 3 minutes. The yellow light and buzzer will let you know you have 30 seconds left to speak. Before you begin to speak, identify yourself clearly by stating for the record your name and address. So I'll call up Ron Wilkes. Ron?
Thank you, Mayor Lord and council members. My name is Ron Wilkes, W-I-L-K-S, 18227 West Santa Alberta Lane, Goodyear. I'm here tonight to provide you with a warning, very important warning. There's a virus coming to your community. It's called pickleball. Warned. Warned. This virus was going to require pickleball widows. You're going to hear too much laughter. You're going to see people in restaurants laughing their heads off and talking about pickleball, and they can't stop. And that's what's going to happen when we hopefully get this approved and get the courts up in our community. On a serious note, I'd like to thank the council for their support in considering building the courts. And I'd like to thank Nathan Torres for spearheading this initiative because it is fabulous for the community. I want to reinforce that there are no pickleball courts in the public pickleball courts in the Southwest Valley. The only public courts are way up in Surprise. By bringing in the courts here, you will allow Goodyear residents not to have to travel to go to public pickleball courts, and that's fabulous. The sport is growing like crazy. There were 2.5 million players. In 2018, it's projected to be 3 million players. It's an increase of about 20%. This is going to allow us to have tournaments and demos and clinics. And as an ambassador to the USAPA, I get phone calls from all around the country, believe it or not, asking, I'm coming to Goodyear. I'm going to stay in Goodyear. I'm going to go watch some of the games or whatever they're going to do. I love pickleball. Where can I play? I can't tell them that they can play in Goodyear. I got to say, go up to Surprise or try to link up with somebody in Pebble Creek or some of the other facilities, the other communities. Now we won't have to do that. On a also very serious note, this sport is extremely social. It's changed people's lives. And I'd like to be very personal for a minute and give you some examples. There's a gal by the name of Cheryl. She plays up in Surprise. She was a friend of mine. She was depressed because she lost her husband. She started playing pickleball and was an outlet for her ability to recover. There was a fellow by the name of Steve who's an ex-pilot. He had Parkinson's disease. He started playing. Once again, he started laughing, having fun, and enjoying himself. Up in Pine Top, where I play sometimes, there's actually a lady that plays with a cane, and the club embraced her to go ahead and play with her handicap. There was a person up there that had oxygen on his back, and it was playing. The club embraced that person, and he was playing and having fun. There's a fellow by the name of Bill who has Parkinson's, dementia. The clubs that I play with him are just one more second. I just want to, again, thank you so much for considering putting in those courts. It is going to be a fabulous opportunity and a fabulous boon to the community. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your words, Mr. Wilkes. All right, the next person is Arthur Torrance.
Arthur Torrance, 10943 South Dreaming Drive, Goodyear. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'd like to say on behalf of a lot of ecstatic Australia residents, Australia Mountain residents, that we appreciate your consideration for the approval of the funds for a softball field in our community park. I'd also like to thank Nathan Torrance for all of his and his associates for all their hard work and planning on that project. I'd just like to say this will add another dimension to our community, from children to adults. It'll bring a girls softball and adult softball to our community, and again, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your words, Mr. Tellman. All right, is there anybody in the audience that hasn't spoken and would like to speak? Okay, then will the city clerk please read Resolution 17-1785 by title only, please?
Adopt Resolution Number 17-1785, adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 estimates of revenues and expenses for the City of Goodyear, including estimated property tax levy and property tax rates as the tentative budget for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2017 and ending June 30, 2018, setting forth the receipts and the amounts estimated as collectible for the previous fiscal year, the amount proposed to be raised by direct property taxation for the various purposes, giving notice of the time for hearing taxpayers, for adoption of budget and setting the tax levies, adoption of financial policies.
Thank you. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Campbell and a second by Councilman Holman. All right, we're open for council discussion. I'll start down this time on the left-hand side.
The only question I had was on the page 8 of your presentation. There was an item that was on our presentation that was for $244,000. I'm going to start that one again. $244,200 Camelback Road pedestrian crossing, and it disappeared. It's not on yours.
Yes, Mayor, council member, you may have noticed I got puzzled during the presentation. It appears the wrong presentation was presented. So if I could provide a few corrections or additional information. And you are correct, that's one of the errors. The slide that was the incorrect slide. You are correct that in addition there is a $244,200 Camelback Road pedestrian crossing. That was not discussed in prior council at a budget-related council meeting, but I believe it came up at another council meeting, and that's a crossing at Camelback Road for, I believe, Millennium High School using the Bullard Wash culvert. Mm-hmm. The other area that I was puzzled about was the list of carryovers, where I thought there was an error. There was more than one error on that slide. The carryovers actually, the items that I listed, there's also, it's the City Hall softscape, the City Hall entrance. There's the council special project fund of $162,000. It started this year at $192,000. You spent $30,000 on the veterans event, so we're carrying that remaining $162,000 over to next year, and we're also carrying over the economic development opportunity fund over. So I think that was the main items. And then I don't think I called out the ballpark actually incorporated the $10.5 million Indians projects in there as well. And again, I apologize.
So I'm going to find them they're here, they're just not here.
The presentation in your materials is the correct presentation.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, they're in here.
Okay, Mayor, my turn?
Yes. Councilman Campbell.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, Lori. They're easy, I think. Okay, so I am on Schedule 11, page 2, second paragraph. You say municipal court security guard $40,700. And then on page 3, you say court enhancement, court security guard, $40,000. So are we getting 2 guards? Or is
Mayor, council member, it's 1 guard that's partly funded by the general fund and partly funded by the court enhancement fund.
Okay, so you just
so it's
split it.
one position
Perfect.
that is multi-funded.
Okay, thank you. My next question is on, I'm not going to give you a page number because there's no page number. Sorry. It's, well done. Well, it's in the city manager's budget message.
Okay. That's my fault.
But it doesn't have a page number. That's okay. But my question, Lori, is in the budget discussions and budget presentations, we were presented with a $100,000 allocation this year to the fire department and a $900,000 possible allocation in the next fiscal year for rehabilitation of Fire Station 183. We asked about it. No one knew what was entailed. City manager provided council with the list of the repairs, and much to our surprise, we realized that we did not have an asset facility plan for the fire stations. We had them for all of our buildings, and we've got them for all of the equipment in the fire stations, but not the stations themselves. So I've noticed all throughout this building, we have asset management plans, we have money allocated, we have facility or other asset plans, and I'm wondering, did I miss an asset management plan for fire stations? Is there one in the budget?
Mayor, council member, we presented several times this year. We talked about the asset management plans. We have not yet completed a facilities asset management plan. You did receive a facilities master plan that went beyond asset management.
Mm-hmm.
We are still working with the facilities area to develop the asset management plan for the buildings. So that's why there are things in the CIP related to buildings. We hope in this coming fiscal year to develop and agree to what the asset management plan for facilities would be, and that would certainly include the fire stations, the part of the fire stations that's not inside, like the chairs and the beds and the equipment.
Right, yeah,
so
and the trucks and everything.
So there are CIP projects because there is not yet an approved facilities asset management plan.
Okay, I just want to be sure, so because we need to take care of those fire stations, we want them to look nice, and it's like anything else. I don't want them to have to wait 4, 5, 6 years to get new carpeting if they need it, or if it needs to be painted on the inside. And I was very surprised to find out that we're going to have to redo the bathrooms because we have female firefighters. We've had them 12 years, and we've not done that bathroom yet. So I just want to be sure we've got something in place now so we don't have to worry about it, that we're not taking care of what we have. Because now a lot of our fire stations are all going to have to be redone or repainted because they've been built a long time ago. The latest one, I guess Pebble Creek is the newest one that we have. So,
Mayor, council member, we've had several meetings with the facilities areas specifically looking at their plan. They do have a plan developed, and we are actually at the point where we're trying to work out things like, oh wait, this is in the fire plan, so it doesn't need to be in the facilities plan, or this is in the fire plan and it really should be in the facilities plan. So we're kind of at the point where we're trying to, make sure that we don't have duplication between the parks plan, where the parks may have some things related to their sites, and what the facility police has. But I assure you we're developing that plan.
Good, because parks would take care of the outside of the buildings because they do they're in charge of the landscaping. So that's their purview.
Right.
And then fire themselves wouldn't go out and paint the building. Someone else has got to see that the buildings are painted and refurbished as needed.
Correct, and it's the painting, the air conditioning systems, the plumbing, the replacing the carpet, the roofing. Those are the types of things that will be in the facilities asset management plans.
Okay.
And it will be for the buildings of the fire department. It will be this building, the city hall building, all the buildings in the city.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all my questions, Mayor.
Next, I'm letting this side go. Council Osborne?
Okay. I have to say that there's a lot of things to be very happy about with this budget. And I thank staff for working hard at this, and our directors and management, because, there's just about something for everyone in here, and things that we've all asked for. And, at the last budget discussion, staff presented your idea of the budget. We all chimed in with some of the things that we were looking for. And now tonight we're voting on it. And so we didn't really hash out, okay, how did we get there then from what we all talked about to here's
paid for
it. Well, yeah, we really didn't, we're missing that meeting. So, and now we're voting on it tonight. So some of the things, just in understanding is where I'm trying to kind of come to conclusion with this. And I do understand if there's too many questions, we do have one more week we could vote on this. Is that correct? I mean, timing wise, if for whatever reason somebody felt uncomfortable, we still do have another week's worth of time. Is that true?
Mayor and council, there's a couple options. Yes, indeed, we could defer voting on the tentative until I believe June 5th would be the next opportunity.
Okay.
We'd have to have everything tied up
and I'm not saying
by
it
next
would.
Tuesday.
I just want to make sure. Okay.
The other option is you're adopting a tentative budget, which is establishing that $320.3 million as our maximum budget. So we could make changes between the tentative and the final based on feedback, as long as we didn't try to increase that $320.3 million. So you have two options. We could delay the vote on this item to June 5th, or we could vote on this item and continue to make changes that you're interested in making and have those as part of the final adoption.
Okay, so a couple of questions. Back to the $244,000 on that pedestrian crossing. Has this been vetted out? I mean, did we do a traffic study? Is this something that we've seen that this is?
I'm going to speak up on this one because we got a call from the neighborhoods.
I'm just asking from one point to the next, what's happened in between? I know that citizens came. I'm just asking, what have we done to know between what a citizen has come to us and said, hey, this needs to happen?
Yeah, well, somebody brief her on how we handled this, who went out, looked over thank you very much.
Can I piggyback on that before you get started, just to make sure you cover it all? This is the first I'm hearing of it. Now, granted, I've been gone for a couple of meetings, so if there's been something that's been talked about, I need to obviously review it. So please be detailed in what you're about to say, because I'm completely lost on this subject.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the conversation originated, and this is to give you a little bit of background, at a HOA meeting for the Palm Valley neighborhood to the north. In that meeting, there were concerns brought up about a number of things, that one of them being students crossing Camelback and heading south to Millennium. There were other comments brought up about access to Camelback from that neighborhood to the north and whether or not a signal was needed. There were conversations about traffic on Camelback and whether or not we were having an issue with cars speeding too fast. Were there issues with, pardon me, the fact that Camelback is unimproved for some portions of it, both to the east and the west. So we looked at all of that information. We did speed studies in the area to see what type of speeds we had. We monitored a number of things. We looked at possible improvements, the cost of improvements to Camelback for some of the widening in the areas. And then we also went back and had conversations about what was the most meaningful improvement to that neighborhood. And it really spoke to the students crossing southward down into the wash area or across the Camelback and trying to get to Millennium. And so we put together some costs. We worked internally with the city manager's office and found that to be the most prudent solution to that issue, which really did provide what is needed for those students.
Okay. And I appreciate that. And if that was information had been sent out, I missed it completely. So that's why I was asking, okay, how did this get here? And, you know, the amount of money for it. I'm not saying it was a bad thing. I just didn't know where it came from, besides the citizen coming to the dais to ask for help about that. So I appreciate that. I don't know if Bill.
So what is the solution?
It's to create a walkway path that comes from the neighborhood on the north side, and then provide a transition path down into the box culvert. The problem is that it needs to be ADA compliant, so that there are some retaining walls that really are the significant cost in which to get us basically from the sidewalk along Camelback and then down under into the culvert. We're also adding lighting under the culvert so that it's a safe environment. We're also adding a step-up level for the path in the culvert so that during times of low flow, we're still going to have a dry crossing for the students. So those are some parts of the costs associated with it.
All right, forgive me for just a second. I'm looking on Google Maps. As I'm trying to visualize this, I live in that area and I just drove it. So you're talking about an underpass, an overpass?
There's an existing box culvert that crosses Bullard Wash that's existing for the flows, but there's a section under that we would add a several-inch lip for the sidewalk for the students. They already, some of them cross that way, and this is just providing a safer dry crossing. So it would be coming from that neighborhood. They would head west along Camelback for several hundred feet and then go down underneath to the entrance to the culvert, cross under the culvert, and at that point they're going to connect to the path that's already existing in the Bullard Washway and then travel southward along to Millennium. And that's where there's a gate that is in the fencing along the western edge of Millennium that's opened in the morning for the students, then locked during the daytime, and then opened again for the students to exit that way.
Okay, I see it. But we're encouraging the use of a box culvert, which is specifically designed for water drainage, to now become a pedestrian walkway.
It's an acceptable use. It's used all over the Phoenix area.
How big is that box culvert? I mean, is it a 10-foot, 8-foot?
I believe they're 8 feet, but I can verify that. And it's a series of boxes. Yeah,
I can visualize that across there because I think that's the end of the improved part of Camelback. Is that correct?
It's just a little bit past there, yes.
Yeah.
Just a little bit to the west.
Obviously, you're the engineer. I'm just personally, I've got, and this was one of my questions. You know, we have a law in the state about people who drive through washes when it's raining. And now we're encouraging pedestrian traffic in an area that is specifically designed for water flow. I'm concerned that's we're going to do that. Right now, it's not a pedestrian walkway. It's not designed as one. Never was intended to be one. Now we're going to, I think, open ourselves up to a potential issue here that I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I literally don't know.
Mayor and Council Member Stipp, the washway is already an acceptable pathway for students to walk in. We have an existing concrete path that the students use today. I understand your concerns, but what I would say is the students would not be using that way if it were full of flow.
Right, but the flow that becomes that flash flood is they're walking in it, they're hanging out in it. It's not designed for it. That's the issue. And the trail that I can see comes out and comes up onto Camelback, and it looks like it connects with the sidewalk in that particular area. Like it's specifically designed that way, that now we're looking at, well, I don't know. I mean, it's just part of it. You know, it's a small part of the entire budget. It's just, I've never seen us react this quickly to a citizen request before, ever. And we had a traffic light issue up in Estrella that it took a couple people getting hit by a car before we finally took action on putting a traffic light in. And now all of a sudden we're going to make a snap decision to create this pedestrian walkway. I'm very concerned about that without much more information. Maybe the rest of the council isn't.
Well, I'm just going to add in there that it doesn't even compare to up at Australia. It's far more dangerous. Absolutely, absolutely. We're lucky somebody hasn't been killed. And I'll turn it over to Councilman Pizzillo.
Was it on that?
I've got something others, but in relation to this, I drove that one day, and I'm surprised the north side of the road in the morning coming out making left-hand turns, there's not more accidents there. It's a very wide intersection, and to me, there's a major problem there. I saw a lady pulling a red wagon to the store at Fry's in the dirt because there is really no room off the road there for any walkways or any bike roads or anything else. So, and I suspect that side of the road's maybe not ours, but there's a problem there, you know, because of the width. So I'm no engineer, whatever it takes to fix it. But I truly believe it's a major problem. And I drove it midday, not in the morning. And the traffic on that road is still, if you try to get out of that neighborhood, you got to go up, turn around, and come back if you're smart, because trying to cross those two lanes and making a left, I think you're taking life in your own hands at times. So that's my 2 cents worth on that, because I drove it, and I think there's a real problem there.
Councilman Osborne?
Thank you, Rebecca, for looking for a solution for this. I do appreciate that. And did you speak with Millennium himself, with the principal or with the district itself about what you were proposing to be a solution for the students? And anybody, really, for that matter, who's trying to cross there. Sorry.
And actually, I'll defer to Luke Albert, the city traffic engineer, because I can't identify exactly who he spoke with at Millennium, but he also talked with our CRO officer there as well. And then he walked it himself to make sure it was safe, and what other improvements did we need to make sure that it was a safe environment for the kids.
Well, and, to Councilmember Stipp's question about that might, they're looking at also for, everybody's looking at the safety of the children, but they may also have maybe here's a different way of doing it. So that's why I asked. And is Luke here to answer that?
No.
Okay. Okay. One other question that you probably have the answer to. So as we're looking at advancing the Saraville Jefferson to Yuma, thank you. But we're deferring the Bullard and Van Buren intersection. That was the that wasn't actual. That was the look of the intersection, correct? That wasn't widening or anything like that, correct?
It was about the first, I would say, 500 feet south of the intersection, so it was a partial improvement. But based on conversations we've had here at council as to the Bullard Avenue improvements and potential overlay district, we thought this was a good opportunity to postpone that until we completed those discussions and move this money forward for this project.
Great. I'm excited about that, and I think that that was it, Rebecca. From back to the whole picture of this budget, and what it means to our citizens and to our staff. I know that Lori went kind of down the list of things, but you just have to reiterate what's going on here. We're talking about the partnership with the library, the going to self-funding of our own insurance for the city, the compensation increases for our staff, trying to be as competitive as possible. We're having that behavioral health connection for police. I think that's important. Lord knows we're getting our pickleball and our softball. We're looking at the Central Park for Goodyear and the rec center. We're increasing art. We're moving up a badly needed street project that I'm thrilled about. We're talking about this crossing for Camelback and for safety. We're continuing our paramedicine and how we can work with our citizens to keep them healthy, that continuum of care that we talk about for our city. How about the possibility that hasn't come up yet tonight of increasing retail and entertainment within our city? And really, this fund can also be something that will help give small businesses a chance to expand. And I'm excited about that. Our 2 new fire stations, our new police squad, increasing the in-focus, summer recreation expansion coming right at the right time. And the big thing for us this year as a city and for history, that surface water treatment plant and our connection to our CAP water is so important. And you know what? The change in our contingency of our financial policy, I think it's okay. I think we've been very conservative. I think that this is still a good amount that we're keeping there, and we've yet to use it. And so I'm glad that we know we have the funds there set aside for who knows what that day would be. But I would have to imagine that, unfortunately, it'd be pretty devastating. And my last little thing that I did look for in city manager, I found it. We do still have the self-help center for the courts within the budget. So, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I can't be mad about not lowering food tax because these are great things, and I'm happy about that. I do wish. I think in the future we should have had one more meeting. I just think we should have had one more meeting before this vote to finalize where all this stuff was coming together. Thank you.
Anybody else here? Comments?
Well, I thought we were just asking questions because I wrote a speech, but I wasn't going to give a speech, and I just asked my questions. So you want to keep asking questions? You can do it before or after.
I'm going to speak.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm going to speak for Vice Mayor Laura Tunt.
Oh, go ahead.
You're not done?
I have questions. So.
All right. Well, then go ahead.
Okay.
Take your question.
All right. The first question, I'm just going to write down the summary of changes from the draft budget, and then I've got some few that are going to come from all over. The move of the development agreement coordinator to the city manager's office out of finance.
Bill, can you bring your microphone up a little closer to you for me, please?
The move of the development coordinator agreement to the city manager's office from finance that was presented to us as a financial issue because most of our development agreements are related to financial matters.
Correct. Mayor, council member, and I'll speak, and Brian may want to speak also.
Yeah, whoever.
It is a position that needs to be able to provide some oversight and direction to all departments that are involved in the development agreement kind of process. And the intent would be that position would work closely with the finance department in the areas where we need to be involved in development agreements, just as they would be working with those in the development services and the engineering departments, economic development.
Mayor and Councilmember Stipp, I just reinforce that. So this was a position that was requested by the finance department, and it is one, in talking to the finance director, really thought that it best resided in the manager's office, fundamentally for this reason. It's a position that will be interacting with legal. It will be a position that interacts with finance, with the city manager's office, with development services, with engineering. So anytime you have that many interfaces with departments, we think it's best to have that actually be in the manager's office, because you can really look at the kind of the flow of information back and forth and if there are decisions that need to be made, et cetera, and looking at resource issues as well. So it's an important one for us, and the recommendation is to have that in the manager's office. One other thing I'd point out is the manager's office, we did use the assistant, one of the management assistants that was assigned out of the manager's office for several months, Christian, and he worked very hard on those and really brought it up to where it is today. And really, but we need to keep that momentum going, and a lot of that work was done out of the manager's office.
This was a supplemental request, right?
It was a supplemental request from the, yes, from the finance department for that position. That's correct.
Okay. So from the very, very beginning of this whole concept of a development agreement coordinator, which would have been back in February, we just now realized before we came to the end of tentative budget that it belonged in the city manager's office?
The supplemental came forward to council for the position, and the recommendation is to have it in the manager's office.
Okay.
It's in there.
No, correct. The position has been in there, but it has always been for finance.
No, they talked about it.
When did we talk about this coming into the manager's office?
I'm not sure when it was talked about amongst council, but what we looked at is where does it make best sense. So again,
I get
that's where
that.
the recommendation is.
I get that. It's just this, in the last presentation, this was in finance. So the change occurred from the last time we had a presentation until tonight.
And yes, Councilmember Stipp, that's why it's noted on the changes tonight.
So for my council colleagues who are
So it's
saying
being
this has been in there
discussed.
the entire
We're
time, that is not
discussing it.
correct.
It's here, it's in front of us. We have
Correct.
the
I'm
ability
just
to-
asking why.
Okay.
Okay, second question. The Economic Development Impact Fee Reduction Program being moved to non-departmental. My only concern with non-departmental is, do we lose visibility on it?
Mayor, council member, the reason to put it in non-departmental is it's a very large number relative to the Economic Development Department, and it's a one-time program, and so you see, if you look at their historical budget, you'll see these bumps and jumps, and so that's usually why we use the non-departmental. I understand what you're saying about that. We will include in the budget, actual write-up of the budget, in the economic development section, we will talk about that program as well as the Economic Development Opportunity Fund that's being carried over. So we'll continue to be focused on that and highlight that throughout the budget and throughout the process in the future as well.
But it will not show up as an individual line item in the non-departmental for us to be able to say we've done 200,000 of it, 100,000 at a quick look. It's going to have to be something that, is that correct?
Mayor, council member, we can certainly in the monthly financial report continue pull out. We're looking at potentially adding a section to give you information on the status of contingency funds. We could certainly add that as another item where we report to you on the status of the use of that fund. It is certainly in non-departmental. It will be separately outlined. It's just that in the budget presentation, if you look at the schedules, they're by categories of contractuals or commodities, so it won't be as easy for you to see it. It would also, in the Economic Development Department, kind of be there amongst other things, but we can certainly focus on ways to make it as transparent as possible.
I would think with the amount of money that we're talking about, and since we haven't had a presentation on the program yet, that there's going to be some ability of staff to just utilize that without it coming before council. I'm imagining, I mean, we're only presuming what's happening, but.
I believe there was a plan to come back with the program.
Yeah, there's a plan to come back for the program, but will we be authorizing? Yeah, that's my
question. Would you address this, please?
It will be a program that's going to be put by you June 5th, so that'll have the parameters, so it won't be us just deciding. You'll decide the parameters of the program. We've talked about it before, but you'll vote on that on June 5th, and then we'll administer the program according to what you've set.
Yeah, so once we set the parameters, we won't see it again.
Oh, but well, if we can do kind of what you were saying.
That's what I'm asking, yeah. Once we set the parameters, we're never going to see how and when it's being used. It doesn't come back before us for approval.
No, it doesn't come back before
Correct.
you for approval. However, we can report to you. It was kind of done that way so it didn't have to come back to you for approval.
Right, and that's what I understand. That's my point, is how do we ensure transparency of $1.1 million if it's tucked away in non-departmental? That's my only concern, and maybe I'm the only one with that concern. But if there's a way to report that, then I think that's awesome.
Mayor, council member, there's also in the monthly financial report, you see a line item for the non-departmental department, and we include comments on that department if it has variations or on about its spending. So it is, the non-departmental department is called out in the monthly financial report, and as I've said, we'll be more than happy to build some ways through the monthly financial report to report on that. We can also bring it forward in other budget items.
And if I can make a suggestion, if this helps any, is maybe we could treat it how we've just now started treating the job credit fund, how you asked this budget decision, what's already spoken for, where's that money? And so every time there's an expenditure out of that, we're reporting it to you. I mean, maybe that's how we do it in the manager's memo or something like that.
I'm sure you guys will figure it out. Thank you.
I didn't hear what you said, Bill.
I said I'm sure they'll figure it out.
All right,
So
thank
you. And then the community paramedicine contingency shows up under the manager's contingency in Schedule 11.
Mayor, council member, that was the suggestion we made when that item came up on April 17th. There was a desire to have the capacity to do that. So we felt putting it in the manager's contingency was the right thing to do. It's a contingency. It requires council's approval to be used, but it would be separately segregated and not, it would only be used for community paramedicine. It wouldn't increase, if we only use 50,000 of it, we wouldn't suddenly increase the manager's contingency by 100. It would be treated as a one-time supplemental.
I'm looking for where my note was. Give me 1 second. So in non-departmental, this is page 1 in Schedule 11. It shows manager's contingency community paramedicine 150,000. But there's also a regular manager's contingency, which I don't know where that shows up.
Mayor, council member, that is in the base budget. So it is in the Schedule 3 already. The Schedule 11 only shows the additions that are coming through the supplemental budget process.
So, thank you. So
on page 4 of Schedule 3.
Right. It shows
under
the
the line
entire contingency of 650,000.
Right, but if you'll look, it shows 500,000 in the base budget column. That's the city manager's contingency, and it shows 150,000 as a one-time supplemental, which is the community paramedicine one-time contingency for supplemental purposes.
Right. So if it's again lumped in there from a transparency perspective, how do we? Because we're just approving numbers at this point. We're not. It's not a policy decision. So how do we?
It will be similar to in that same budget. We have the FMLA and retirement contingency or retirement payout contingencies.
Is that the personnel?
Yeah, that's the personnel. Those items require a budget transfer to be used, and as we bring budget transfers forward, we identify where the source is. So if we identify the use of the community, if we were doing something for community paramedicine, we'd identify the source as that one-time supplemental. If it was another type of city manager contingency, we'd identify the source as the 500. So we will separately track as we do all one-time supplementals. It will also be placed in Fund 2, which is in a very technical basis. We put one-time things in their own fund when it comes to the general fund, so it's easier for us to monitor them and assure they don't get used for a purpose that they were not intended. and to make sure that we don't include them in the subsequent year-based budget.
Okay. Just real quick on a couple of the carryovers, the add to the City Hall entrance and the softscape enhancements, those are just carryover amounts. They're not additional funds. Is that
correct? It's just carry over the funds that still remain this year to complete those projects next year.
And the word add and carryover were conflicting in my brain.
The add is telling you that we're adding it to the carryovers in from the 17th.
Yeah, that would have been the assumption, and I would have made it and been wrong. So the other questions that I have are related to the 7 fire department FTEs for the ambulance and the $1 million in operating budget money for the ambulance service. Those are in the base.
The ambulance includes, let me just get the right page.
It's page 5 of Schedule 3.
In the, if that's where they are, they.
Well, that's where the whole ambulance service piece is. Just over 1 million.
Again, council member, the 62,000 of the ambulance program is the cost associated with the actual positions that will be hired near the end of the year. And again, the $1,053,500 is in that one-time column, which means it is not part of the base budget, and it will only be used for the one-time costs such as the vehicles and the supplies. And so again, it would be treated in that fund too, where it is protected from being used for other purposes.
But the 62,000 is not.
Correct. The 62,000 is the actual salaries of the 7 positions, and which just that we're bringing them on late next year.
Right. So if we, for whatever reason, end up not being able to enter into the ambulance service business, there's 62,000 that can theoretically be used for overtime or whatever else.
I would recommend. It's a generally the first year that a supplemental is funded. That's an ongoing supplemental. It's the practice since I've been here to not allow that supplemental to be used for any other purpose in that first year. Perfect. So I would recommend, if that happens, that a budget transfer come to council to reduce that budget.
Okay. And then finally, since we talked about everything, financial policy number 10, which you talked about at the end. Which is at the very back. The strategic planning, yeah, surprise, surprise. Theoretically, our strategic plan should be driving our budgetary discussions. And if we're not annually updating the strategic plan in order to validate and adjust our budget, perhaps we're not doing things correctly. As a council, I think since these are our policies, I think it's really important that we leave that in there and make sure that we are thinking strategically, acting strategically, and using that to guide our decisions, and that we're not making emotional decisions based on what we want today, or something that isn't in our long-term interest.
Mayor and Council, I would then recommend we take it out of a category that's called budgetary control, that is sitting with something like doing financial status reports. I think you're correct that it is part of the guiding principles, and perhaps we pull it up into the original guiding principles, but more than happy to leave it there as it is as well.
Well, I think if we're approving this entire thing tonight, I guess I look to Rorik now. Do we have to amend this now?
Well, technically you're setting your high end on your budget, so it could be corrected prior to the final budget.
Right. But I'm just looking at this big thing on the thing here that says this is what we're doing.
It's actually 2 items. It's approving the budget and it's approving the financial policies. So you can certainly, last year you didn't approve the financial policies until after the tentative budget had been adopted. So they do not have to go hand in hand. They could have been presented as 2 different items if you would have.
Yeah, I just don't know how we're voting. That was the only reason that I brought it up in this fashion.
And I appreciate that, Bill, because I was actually meant to ask you being the strategic plan wizard, if you thought that should be there, or to Lori's statement, or is there a better place for it to be sitting?
Yeah, I don't, quite honestly, it doesn't matter where it is, but I think it needs to be there. And I don't know if that's I'll let you guys decide. And if we don't have to decide right this very second, then you'll figure it out. And when we vote on it on the 22nd, then I guess we're good. But if we have to do it tonight, then I guess we have to have that discussion.
Are we waiting for someone's opinion on that, or can I go on?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the resolution. You have it adopting your financial policies tonight, so.
In the resolution?
That's what your title says. So yes, I think you need a motion to amend.
Okay, so I guess we're going to do you have a recommendation?
Do I have a recommendation?
I can make a motion on?
I would recommend that you amend the portion of the are you comfortable with it being an overall goal? I would recommend that you amend the financial policies as presented to incorporate the strategic plan as an overall goal of the financial policies due to its nature of guiding the overall budget process.
So
the overall goal is on page 1.
So can we finish the
So it's
discussion
under that
first
section.
before we amend the motion?
I assume so, but
I think other people ought to play into this.
Certainly up to the chair.
Pardon me?
It's up to the chair on how you want to handle that.
All right, I would like to finish the conversation, and then we'll go back to this, and we can see about amending. So,
okay, well, Joe's next.
Joe?
Yeah.
I guess I am.
There are, let me bring this over here. There are a lot of great things in this budget. In fact, I think Councilmember Osborne hit on a lot of them that impact and enhance the lives of our citizens. Very proud of a lot of things that we have in there. Our health services, self-employed, what we've done to make us more competitive. But there is one thing that I'm very passionate about that I kind of led the charge in fiscal year 2010-11 when it deals with the enterprise fund. And if you just bear with me a second, because I typically don't write my thoughts down, but this is very important to me. And again, I realize we're approving the tentative budget tonight, and maybe my colleagues may see their way to maybe making a little tweak when we get to the final, but here's my thoughts. Although I agree the city is not prohibited from using property tax supporting bonds on surface water projects, I believe using such a financing source for the project violates the spirit of the policy because there are viable and reasonable alternatives for funding the project without taxing those residents who reside outside the city's service area. I do agree that the project to bring CAP water to the city and building a water treatment facility is a very important project for the future of our city. My objective is changing a 6-year-old policy of having the enterprise fund cover its cost and not using property tax to pay for the enterprise fund projects, since it results in people outside the service territory being taxed when they're already paying a provider for water sewer services, and I believe there are viable and reasonable alternative financial sources. When asked why not using alternative funding sources were not considered, the written response received from one of my questions was such a move reduces funds available for other city projects. Understand that. I can appreciate the position, but believe we should find the money to cover the debt service without levying a property tax. The other question I asked was what would be the impact to the rates to cover the costs within the city's rate structure. The response was 94 cents increase for a 10,000-gallon water user. I believe the impact could potentially even be lessened by backloading the debt service schedule, since the project is intended to meet growth needs. Backloading the debt service payment schedule, in my opinion, costs be spread over more customers, reducing the additional impact on the ratepayer. Either way, I do not believe changing a 6-year practice policy that some have fought hard to achieve is not warranted at this time. I remember back in 10-11 when I proposed the action to start removing over $3 million in water sewer debt payments from the secondary property tax lever, which took the city council 2 fiscal years to accomplish. The goal, I was very proud of our actions, finally having the enterprise fund being self-sufficient. Prior administrations used a similar logic that the wastewater projects benefited the entire city, hence the ultimate sale of GO bonds with the debt service payments being paid by property tax levy, resulting in taxing residents who lived outside the city water system is how it came about. I am very proud to have started the process of having the enterprise fund cover its costs and very disappointed that the proposed funding of the water treatment facility in this year's budget reverses our current policy. I realize the actual tax reissuance to our residents is minor, but it's in my view that changing the practice is not necessary because of the other viable and reasonable options available, so we do not need to tax residents living outside the city service order area. And a change in the policy opens the door to future GO bond financing, since change no longer has the enterprise fund covering its costs. I can appreciate one's position of using the citywide property tax as a means of funding major city water projects if the city has very limited funding options. But the funding of the $7.5 million water treatment facility, in my opinion, has other viable and reasonable options that does not require placing a property tax, and again, on those non-service area residents to build the project. I believe the city could use revenue bonds and possibly backloading the debt payment schedule to minimize the impact on the water rates, or find sources within the current budget. As you know, we've got pushing almost $300 million to meet the debt service payment schedule. I believe this is a good budget, but I also believe that we are going down the wrong path by taxing residents outside our service area when, in my opinion, there are other reasonable and viable alternative funding sources other than a property tax. In summary, I cannot support the proposed current tentative budget in its current form.
Thank you, Joe. Councilman Campbell, did you want to read your...
I'm going to just say a few things because I was going to, number one, thank Doug Sandstrom and Lori. Let me get my glasses on. Okay. I would like to thank Doug Sandstrom, Finance Director, and Lori Wigenroth, Budget and Research Manager, for working so diligently to present to us a balanced budget. I appreciate all of the hours that you and and I want to thank you for that. I think I do agree with Councilmember Osborne. I wish we would have had a couple more budget presentations because, frankly, I enjoy them. I don't like getting a lot of information all at once, and then I need to figure out how it got there, like Councilmember Stipp was talking about, and that's why I called you, Lori, and asked my questions up front so I wouldn't take the time tonight. I am really thrilled with the things that are in our budget, especially the recreation campus with the possibility of having an aquatics facility planned, and also that we have added another summer recreation program. We've extended the library hours. We're adding a new police patrol squad. We're going to be recruiting and training firemen and paramedics to have them ready to start service in the next fiscal year for Fire Station 186 in Estrella that is yet to be built. That is a wonderful thing that we will be ready to go. The softball field is, of course, a given. The pickleball, Nathan and I have talked pickleball for the 6 years that I have been on council. And I have been to the community center a million times with people saying they would like to have pickleball. So I'm really grateful that we are building only 6 courts. I am hoping that this will be the first of many. If anything, we probably need 10 or 20 courts as we continue to develop out our parks. Our rainy day fund of 2 months is fine. I prefer personally 3 months, but I understand why we're doing the 2 months, and that's fine with me. We're going to be building the replacement of 181 and the additional station in EMR. And I would just like to say, I hope that in the planning of these 2 fire stations, that the architects, the project manager, and everyone involved actually talk to the firemen who will be in the station to get their take on how some of these stations are built, because perhaps we won't have so much wasted space if they ask someone who actually knows what they're doing and they're in the building. 2, since we have 2 of our own firemen fighting cancer right now, I'm hopeful, and I would like to encourage that perhaps Goodyear be on the cutting edge of adding whatever filtering systems we need to do in these 2 new fire stations to filter out all the carcinogens that come with our folks fighting fires, whatever we need to do, because they're coming up with new filter systems, and we need to be aware that we probably are aware of it, but I'd like to see us actually step out and do something about it. I'm really thrilled about increasing in focus from 7 issues to 12 issues, and I'm hopeful that by doing 12 issues, we will be able to have a direct communication line to our citizens, telling them what we as a city are doing and what we are accomplishing and what we expect out of them and what input we want from them. And I'm real happy that we've dropped the property tax from 186 to 173. And with that, thank you very much.
Anything, Councilman Holman?
I too wanted to especially thank you, Lori, for your patience with us and your understanding that we're all on the same page and that we're trying to do the best we can with the money we have for the most people in the city of Goodyear. And that having been said, one of the things that I know I'll be leaving council, and there's a section of our city that I'm going to appeal that you all keep in your hearts and your mind, because it's one of the older communities. And the way the fire stations are being placed, I would say we really desperately need mutual aid, because as it is, most of us in the older sections are being serviced by the Avondale Fire Department because of the mutual aid agreement. So I just hope that we can keep that in mind, that we're citizens that care about our city as well. And we're going to count on you to carry that and recognize that there may not be anybody here to speak for us, but that we need to care about that part of our city.
We do.
Sherilyn, I appreciate your remarks, and I have to tell you, I think we all feel very strongly about historical Goodyear. It was our beginnings, and it's always been a shame that it didn't advance enough to have a downtown that we could take advantage of, like Gilbert has. So I agree with you, and I respect your reminder to us, and it'll be in the minutes. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to read a statement from Vice Mayor. Okay, she asked me to do that. And I'm very much in line with her comments, and I thought she said it well. She says, "I'm sorry I cannot be here tonight. However, I wanted to give my input on the budget that we have been working on for the past several months. First, thank you to the city manager and the entire city staff, as well as the mayor and the entire council for all the hours, the thought, and the hard work that went into this budget. I believe this budget reflects the priorities we set forth for our outstanding community. With this budget, we will continue to make our citizens' health and safety a priority with the additional fire stations and police personnel. I think adding a police assistant is important, as it helps to free up the sworn officers to handle more serious matters. The new police squad is also important with the growth of our city to keep our citizens safe. Also, I am happy that we have the funding for our fire services to help with growth, especially in the south and the west portions of our city. It is important we maintain a safe and modern fire stations, and I'm glad the funding is in the budget for those much-needed upgrades. I often remind people that our fire personnel not only work in the stations, but it is their home during their shift. I'm glad to see that we have Plan B, community paramedicine, as this is a great program and we do want to see the end. We do not want to see it end. The budget reflects the priorities of more recreational opportunities for our citizens. We will finally begin the work on the park and the aquatic center, as well as add a softball field in Australia and a pickleball court in the city. Parks and recreation, arts and culture, well, they're the heart of our city. The budget covers an important areas such as making sure our streets are well maintained. We have a 100-year water supply for our desert home, and we ensure we retain top talent to serve our citizens. Although there are areas I would like to see us do more and progress faster, we have a limited amount of funds to accomplish our goals. And I believe we have a fiscal conservative budget that is good for Goodyear. And again, I thank you. So this is in the name of your Vice Mayor. I thought she put that down beautifully.
Very nice.
So we have something to solution here, right? We had,
Yes, Madam Mayor, I believe Councilmember Stipp wanted to make an amendment to the motion on the resolution.
What was the recommendation from staff?
Councilmember, I think the easiest way to do it would just be to not strike out the reference to this strategic plan in the current version. And then when we come back to you next year with financial policies, we'll craft an overall goal as number 4 so that we don't misword it or not word it properly in this setting if exact wording is required right now.
Okay, so I'm making a motion that we do not strike out Section 10, Item B, leaving in annually update the strategic plan in order to validate and adjust the plan and assumptions to remain viable.
are you writing this down? Somebody writing this down there. So just so I have this clear, so we will make a motion in a second with,
Correct. So I think that's your motion. It's
The
to
motion
delete
is
the
to
reference
not-
to the strikeout.
Is to not strike out 10B.
Yep. So that's your motion.
okay, so we vote on that first.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll need a second
So-
on that, then you'll take.
I need a motion that we not strike out for,
Need a second.
I made the motion.
and I need a second.
I'll make the second.
All right, heard a motion from Councilman Stiff, second from Councilman Pizzillo. Roll call vote on this?
Doesn't have to
No?
be.
You don't have to have it. All in favor? All in favor say aye.
This is just on the motion. I just want to make
The
sure.
amendment.
Okay.
Just on that one.
Okay.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Now I can go back to this.
Now you're back to the main
All
motion.
right, can I have a motion and a second?
We already have the motion on the main.
You want me to, okay, where are we here?
So you're back to the main motion, which is the resolution, which you already have the motion in the second. So if you're ready to vote, it'd be a roll call.
I can't hear anything up here.
Do a roll call.
You're to the
Just
point.
a roll call vote.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, roll call vote then.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
This is on the tentative?
This is on the tentative budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Nay.
Councilmember Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Councilmember Homan,
Aye.
Mayor Lord,
Aye.
passes 5-1.
Well, I didn't. 10 o'clock. Yeah, I'm going to make an after comment here. I just want to thank staff. There was a lot of hours, and I know it was mentioned we didn't have enough meetings, but I do remember a definite conversation from this council that said they did not want this year the number of meetings. I see you're all saying that now. You absolutely stated that. It was brought to me, and we discussed it in a meeting, and you all seem to have forgotten that. But I'm going to remind you of this. And so the whole goal was to try to concise it and make it so you didn't have so many meetings, because everybody was quite unhappy about that. But I just want to thank the staff and all the departments putting a budget together. And I thought this described it really well.
good book.
All the work that goes into this. And it's very difficult to work with the council because we're constantly changing back and forth and doing our thing. But you did a great job, so I appreciate it. So let's go on to 7.6, right? That where I'm at? Thank you. So the next item of the business to consider approving the use of the budgeted fiscal year 18 fleet funds. Cheryl Schneider, Fleet and Equipment Management Superintendent, will present.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight to discuss the FY18 fleet replacement plan. Tonight, I'm seeking your approval to spend an estimated $1.3 million with Courtesy and Midway Chevrolet in order to purchase the GM vehicles identified in the FY18 fleet replacement plan. Your approval tonight will facilitate the new vehicles for the new patrol squad 45 to 60 days earlier than if we waited for the 2018 production date to start, which is August 7th, 2017. So we'll be able to get ahead of the game. This course of action, we'd be able to have those vehicles on the ground around mid-July. If we waited for the 2018 model, we're looking probably into September, best case scenario, possibly bleeding into October, which would lead to the new patrol officers not having a vehicle during that time frame. So I'm open for your questions.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Anybody in the audience like to speak? All right. Then can I have a motion a second to approve the FY18 expenditures in the general fund, water, wastewater, enterprise funds in the amount of $1,343,000 for the purchase of replacement and new vehicles from Midway Chevrolet and Courtesy Chevrolet. Estimated expenditures with each of these vendors are $703,000 and $640,000 respectively. Do I hear a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. I heard a motion from Councilman Stipp and a Councilman Pizzillo and a second from, I'm always going to do that.
We'll just call him Stipello.
A second from,
Oh, I like that.
there's just something about it. A second from Councilman Campbell. Open for council discussion.
Good question.
Oh, no.
Yes. Councilman Pizzillo.
Here we go. This is all part of your depreciation schedule. These are on track to be replaced, correct?
Mayor, council member, yes, sir.
Yeah, no, okay. I just want to get that on the record. Thank you.
Councilman Osborne.
I have one request, and I'm not sure if any of these vehicles that are about to be retired are any that are for city council or the mayor. They're not. Darn. But in the future, whenever that one comes, I would request, and don't call me a princess, I would request that that vehicle, don't you call me that, would have, fine. Yes. Or whatever the council drives has the GPS system within it. Because I'm serious, we drive so many places and across the valley, and I think that's a tool that is helpful to staff and to council. So don't call me a princess. But I really think that in the future, since it's not this year, in the future, I think that would be helpful.
It's a great idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate
Great
that.
idea.
I'm pitching for a Prius.
As long as it's got a
Prius
GPS,
may
fine.
have the GPS with it.
Okay, we're good.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. So council discussion is finished. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Before we go, I did not say to the council, and I do want you to know, because we do have tense moments, but I really appreciate all you've done. I appreciate all the council meetings. I appreciate your honesty. You're brave. You tolerate my Bill Stipp and Joe Pizzillo. You do so many things for me as a mayor, and I really, really appreciate it. And we couldn't come and have the great without this council. It's been a great combination, and you should all pat yourselves on the back, and I greatly appreciate you. Okay, so now we're down to information items. Anybody want to talk about yourself? Anything you've done? No? No, I haven't. Yeah. Councilman Pizzillo.
Yeah, I'll talk about what I would have done, but what I'm most proud of, I went to my granddaughter's performance when she sang, what was it, Untitled the World?
I know, wait a minute.
Come on, help me out here, Wally, you saw it.
Oh, my gosh.
But anyway, talent show at the school, did an excellent job, Ian Key. It's going to be our next Broadway star in the family. So, so that's what I'm proud of, so that's what I'm talking about.
Mayor, sorry. Okay, on Saturday I went to Kids to Park Day, and that was a lot of fun. We had over 118 kids flying kites when the wind was blowing, and then when the wind stopped blowing, we did three-legged races with sacks. That was really fun. About killed myself. And then we did sand sculpturing, which is something that was new. They ordered the fine sand from Amazon and put them in baby wading pools, dry, and the kids made sand sculptures, and they absolutely loved it. It was just a wonderful day. And then we went over to Fire Station 183, where they had a wonderful emergency medical services open house, and we were able to see the fire trucks. We were able to have a CPR training. We got a tour of the fire station, and it was really a lot of fun. And the residents really came out for that, as well as we had farmers market that day too. So it was a busy Saturday for us, but it was wonderful. Perfect weather.
Well, I appreciate all those that attended those events since I was sick.
I know you were sick.
And so I couldn't do any of them, but I've heard, like you say, they were very successful.
Mayor,
yes.
I'm sorry. I did attend something that I should tell the council. It was the Salton Verde River discussion, and for the water fund and potential projects that are going forward. And I think it will be very interesting as all the cities start to step up to help everything from the beginning of where our water starts to enter the state and on down. We are one water, and I appreciated being there. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being there. I'm sorry I missed it. Anything else? Yeah, Councilman Stiff?
Last week, Councilmember Pizzillo and I did the lean tour over at Development Services. There was a great presentation by staff that was there. No offense to the directors that presented, but staff did a good job. While I was there, I killed two birds with one stone. Had a conversation with Rebecca and with Luke about the traffic lights in and around the Litchfield and Indian School corridor. You may have seen, I don't know if it came out yet or if it's going to come out this week, but the engineering staff, particularly Luke and company, was very responsive to some of the timing issues that I raised and made them aware of that they were not aware of. Not only did they get to them to look at them, but they've also already made the corrections to that, and for that I'm grateful. And publicly I'm going to say I lost the bet to Luke for the staff's benefit. I still don't think it's wrong, but I'm going to have to go with the photographic evidence of the speed limit changes on Bullard Avenue. So tell Luke I owned up to it in public. And with that, I do have a request to the manager when it gets time to that.
Joe, you have anything more? All right.
Mayor,
yes.
I did the lean tour this morning.
I'm sorry, what?
I did the lean tour this morning with Developmental Services, and the staff was outstanding, and I got to see some of the processes that they are now implementing and their processes that we have talked about, and they just did an outstanding job. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for all your comments. All right, then the city manager, do you have anything to report?
Mayor, members of the council, just as a reminder, we will be closed Monday in observance of Memorial Day. Public safety will be fully operational. Trash sanitation services will not be. So for residents listening, look at the website and you'll see how your service is impacted.
Great. Is there any staff summary to follow-up action? The follow-up action?
I did not have anything for follow-up. Other than going back to the CFDs, we will be providing those balances as well as the remaining terms of those bonds. That's what I have at this point.
All right. Do we have to mention that?
Request to the manager.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the repairs that are necessary to the ballpark, we talked about this a couple of months ago. We're underway. We were setting aside money, et cetera, and we were supposed to be getting an update or at least a summary of the causation of why this happened during construction, et cetera. Are we still progressing on that, and are we on target?
Councilmember Stipp, we'll get back with you on that. That still is in process, but we will get back with council with that information.
Councilman Zillow?
Is it possible to get a yellow paper on what is it, hands-free, or what some of the other cities are doing as far as ordinances are concerned? The reason to ask on that is stats is if you can see if any of them have passed any of those and what results they've had today. I'd be curious. My travels throughout the valley, I'm amazed at how many people are actually staring at that phone while they're driving. And if I'm not mistaken, we've actually had, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, haven't we had a death several years ago as a result of some young person texting? Wasn't there a head-on? Yeah. Was it?
I don't think so.
No? I thought we had something on there. But anyway, could you just give me that information? I'll be curious on it because I'm surprised. And I'm on two wheels, and that's scary enough. But when I'm looking over to the right and I have somebody who's texting and doing all other kinds of stuff besides eating breakfast, that's even scarier. So I'd be curious to see if there's anybody doing it and what kind of results they've had so far.
So just to be clear, we're looking at if cities have ordinances in place that require hands-free when you're using your cellular devices.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mayor?
Yes.
I have an inquiry, Mr. City Manager. A couple of months ago, I had a conversation with Luke Albert our traffic engineer and ask him when were we going to remove some of the burlap off of the traffic lights that have left turn signals and right turn signals. And he said that they were doing an assessment of it, and that as they took them off, they had to do some tweaking or buy a part or do something. They couldn't just uncover them. And I just thought that since our traffic has increased threefold in the last 2 years, that I'm hoping that they monitor it really closely and that they get some of those covers off. They would help the movement on Pebble Creek Parkway immensely if they would do that. Specifically at Roosevelt and at, is Roosevelt where QT is?
Yes. No, QT is just south of that.
Okay, but it's where QT is and also where Roosevelt is. That would be nice. Thank you. But it's all over town. As you know, they're covered everywhere. So perhaps.
Just so I'm clear, it's where we're at the process of removing the head covers on some of the signals that are not operational at this point.
Right. Are we going to do
what's the status of when those get removed?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, we'll follow up.
Any other?
When you go to turn left.
Any other questions?
You don't get a left-hand turn. Where? It does?
What
it
I'm
does?
sorry. I don't have this here, so I don't know where she's got. Somebody want a hand? All I have. Does council have any comments, combination reports, and current events? I don't have page 9 after that, so. Nope, I don't have anything.
Well, that's what your information item does say. I don't think it's what it's intended
I
for.
found this one. Let's see if it's in here. Okay.
Well, doesn't she ask it?
What are you referring to? Say that again.
So 8 information items. It's comment, commendations, report on current events, and presentations by mayor, council members, staff, or members of the public. I have something I'd like to say. But each week I've waited, they never announced.
Well, I didn't know. Thank you.
Typically,
Does
we
that
handle that
mean
in the
for the
call to the
public to
public.
come up and give information?
Typically, we handle that in the call to the public.
Yeah.
Because I have nothing but an echo tonight up here, I have to tell you, so I can hardly hear anything. What did you just say?
So typically, we handle that in the call to the public.
The very beginning.
At the beginning of the meeting.
Beginning is the call to the republic.
That's where you
The public. Republic.
It's not on the
But-
agenda.
I'm really not saying anything bad. In fact, I would have already been finished.
I tell you what, as your mayor, I'm going to say you can put that in writing and send it to us in an email, but it is in the beginning of I call out. So anybody that wants to speak on a non-agenda item, right? Do you remember that? And then also, I also do that if you're going to speak on an agenda item.
Mayor, it's up to you if you'd like to do it.
So we're going to set a precedence, and that's what we're going to do? We're going to switch that?
I can look at our rules of procedure. I'm just looking at the agenda.
All right.
But it's the mayor's prerogative.
All right. Council says fine. Come forth, please. Be sure to say your name and address.
Sure. Mayor and council members, I'm Sarah Gilligan. I reside at 12503 South 175th Avenue. And what I'm actually wanted to say is I'm so thankful that over 10,000 residents in Goodyear participated in our city council election. And I'm excited that the public spoke. It's wonderful. I also wanted to share that I attended a meeting last week on the State Route I-11 and working on the corridor from Nogales to Wickenburg. It was quite interesting the way they hosted the meeting with the boards. Is very similar to our public budget meeting with the boards and questions available, but they also took some time to explain all of the boards, not just personally to us, but they did a short presentation. It was very much appreciated, and it'll be very interesting going forward to see the decision made, which route will be chosen to go through Goodyear or Buckeye or not. And that's really all I had to say. Is I really was thankful to the city with that so many. We were worried not so many people were going to vote, and we came close to how many participated in the mayor and council election. So I know I wish all the luck to my opponent, Brandon Hampton, and I know he's going to do a great job. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Anything else? With that, meeting's adjourned.